one of few, we would have quorum. Good afternoon, members of the public. Welcome back after the lunch break to our February the 23rd council meeting. We will be starting momentarily. We've just got 4 members of council on the screen at the moment. We're just waiting for a 5th to achieve quorum and we'll get started. Okay, thank you, Councillor Barros. We have quorum, so we can get started. It's a little bit past 1:30.
Sorry, I'm late.
I'm sorry?
I just said sorry that I'm late.
Oh, that's okay, no problem. We are at agenda item number 1212, which is a delegation by Mr. Arenas. I hope I've said that right, sir. And from 50 Sapphire Drive regarding the Electric Utility Corporation hydropower supply for site plan application D06-19010. So without further ado, Mr. Arenas, you have 5 minutes to address council. You can start whenever you're ready.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, can I request that I go third because I think we discussed it amongst our delegation and I requested that I be placed last. Can that be accommodated?
Sure. Well, you were probably too quick on your finger then to sign up. So
I did register early. Yeah,
okay,
sure.
Who is it? Is it Key Zhang or Mr. Menzies that should be first then?
Up to you. You can decide.
Oh, okay. Ms. Zhang, if you would like to start, that would be fine. Go ahead.
Okay, I'm here to talk about the hydro poles that's currently installed on west side of the Leslie Street. The current issue, currently the city agreed with Electra to take the option 4, which is lowering the pole heights by 10 feet and consolidating with the street lights poles. My concern is that the problem caused by the poles is not a cosmetic issue. The major issue caused by the poles is that it's going to be carrying the electricity that's by approximately 50% of the current Richmond Hill City's total electricity supply. This is for supporting the data center that's going to be operational. The issue is that the poles are causing hazards to the local residents. It's not only the EMF, electric magnetic field issue, but also after the data center gets in operational, the transformers of such high voltage circuits will be buzzing 24 hours a day. Nobody would ever be able to sleep well with such a circuit just outside of their windows. And currently the option 4 is the purpose is just for reducing the construction cost for the Electra. I want to bring to your attention that in this plan, you never considered the cost of to local residents. I talked to Electra. They denied that there's any impact or property value loss for the local residents. So let's have a look at the facts, and let's talk with the facts. And I will give you an example. Counting the homeowner of 45 Sapphire Drive, Sam. Yeah, this is one picture of the post under construction. Can you please scroll down to the next slide? Thanks. This is a picture of the 45 Sapphire. You can see the poles are huge beside their house, and currently we have a battle against this pole installation for over a year without any result. So the homeowner is currently under extreme stress and anxiety. They often suffering from insomnia, so they decide to sell their house. Currently, the townhomes in this area was sold over 1.6 million. And the homeowner, they have a home. They lived here for over 12 years. They love their home, but therefore, they're forced to sell the home they loved. And this house is a 2,800 square feet detached house located on a very nice and beautiful large lot size. They have a beautiful garden too. And they're just asking for a townhome price, and nobody even look at it. People comes and see the pole, they directly go. No one even ask anything. So they're pretty stressed. Such a big house cannot be even sold at a townhouse price. How can Electra deny that there's no impact to local residents' property value? And we're losing our home, losing our life quality, losing the peace, and losing our health, and losing our property value. And this such loss is devastating to each family affected. We are just workers struggling to live paycheck to paycheck. If we sell off our house and move to other house, we are not able to afford because the property value got dropped significantly by the impact of the poles. Why should we bear such huge loss? It's unfair, right? How many years of hard working can cause that much cost? Consider each home will lose at least hundreds of thousands of dollars of value loss. And on top of that, if we move, there will be property tax and real estate agent commission fee. That's
Ms.
extra.
Sorry, Ms. Zhang, sorry to interrupt. Your time is up. Can you just wrap it up?
Sure.
Please? Okay, thank you.
Sure. And if the city supported option 4, please come up with a proper compensation plan to local residents to cover all the costs for the affected homes. It's fair. It will be fair if we can be moved to another similar home with the same quality in this area, but the cost will be covered by whoever.
Okay.
The city and plus I strongly appeal to select option 5, which is move to east side of the street.
Okay.
And
thank you. We've got your delegation. We've got a couple more people to speak here. So
okay.
thank you very much for your words. We certainly have heard that. So thank you very much.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Okay, so I think the next speaker then is Carl Menzies. Mr. Menzies, if you're available at this time. Do we have Mr. Menzies in the queue? Oh, there we are. Go ahead, sir. You need to unmute and you have 5 minutes. 5 minutes.
Hello? Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, sir. Go ahead.
Okay, so I'd like to address, first of all, the height of the pole, right? We were initially informed that the poles would be at a height of 90 feet. And we were informed that, you know what, this will have very low impact on health, everything is taken care of and stuff like that. which was fine. Without any of our consent or anything, these poles were cut down to 75. So the question here is, we are really not sure as to what is the exact height. It is a health concern, right? I am personally most impacted with this because I have two poles, one in the backyard and one in the front yard. So that if you look at that picture there, that's of them just coming one day and reducing the size of that pole. So that's a major concern for me right now, since I have two poles, both, one in the back, like I said, backyard, and one facing my front yard. The other main thing, what we've noticed is the lack of communication between Electra, Urbicon, the city, and the residents. So we are informed something, and later on, something else is done. The communication also is not timely. Like we usually get the communication a day before or, a week before, where we can't even discuss anything. So that is a major concern here. So we can't even express ourselves. Also, we have town hall meetings. We've had town hall meetings, and they've proven to be ineffective. They've mentioned.
Oh, no. Mr. Menzies, you're on mute and you froze there for a moment.
Okay, can you hear me now?
No, I can't hear you now. Go ahead.
Okay, so these town halls that we have had also, they have been pretty ineffective. Like we were informed at one town hall that, the polls would be at a distance. If we wanted, we can ask those polls to be, moved just so that it's out of our view or something like that. But that has not happened ever since, so all we are saying is, if these poles can be moved to the other side of the road, there are no houses there, there's least impact, there's no health issues if you do that, rather than putting it on the side of, the street on Leslie. Also, like there are, we hear of murals that are going to be erected, right, which are going to come up right in front of our bedrooms. So this communication thing is really not very effective at this point. Basically, that's my concern, and I'd like to put this forward to you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Menzies. I appreciate your time you've taken to speak to us. The last speaker on this issue is Mr. Arenas. Mr. Arenas.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council, for giving me. Sorry, it says in here, start my video. Okay,
Go
thanks
ahead.
again for allowing me to speak on behalf of my community. My family moved to this neighborhood 22 and a half years ago, when the Barker Business Center was still a cornfield with a few apple trees running south towards the Rouge River. At that time, we were touched each time we drove up to our new home, as the drive along Leslie Street, north of Major Mackenzie, was an idyllic two-lane country road. We were very much aware that this bucolic setting was going to be short-lived, and that progress will come, and that eventually we will be neighbors with more houses and commercial properties. We never imagined that such progress would take us to the point of having monstrous power lines planted literally next to our backyards. I'm speaking on the council on behalf of our community, and to reiterate the points that the previous delegations had made in the current and previous meetings, and to advise council of our preferred option. To summarize, these are the community's concerns. We feel that our concern on the diminished quality of life that this project will bring have not been satisfied. There's been no studies conducted on health hazards like constant electrical noise and EMF fields that could impact our health. There's been no information shared on components that will go along with these poles. For example, the project, we're told, will provide 5 megawatts of power. How many transformers will this require? Are these towers capable of loads of more than 5 megawatts? What will stop Electra if they were to enable more megawatt capacity in the future? These poles are permanent structures that will permanently embed stress and anxiety in the community. We feel that all the parties, Electra, Orbicon, York Region, and the city, benefits financially from the project, with the neighborhood bearing all the negative consequences. We believe keeping the poles on the west side will lower property values of our houses. We believe there are no other neighborhood in Richmond Hill that have a line of towering poles flanking their property lines. Our community will become a less desirable option within Richmond Hill. The community accepts the fact that our original desire to have the project buried underground is unlikely to gain acceptance due to its high ticket price. However, our community stands firm on relocating these poles to the east side of Leslie. We are asking that the line swing under Leslie at Performance Drive and run the poles on the east side of Leslie north to Elgin Mills. This, we believe, will be accomplished by voting for option 5 outlined in the February 9 council meeting, the titled Request for Direction, AUC Hydropower Supply. We are respectfully asking council to vote for this option and to request administration to source the funds necessary for this option. I would like to make council aware that to go for the recommended option 4, the cheaper option, will mean the hydro towers will be on the west side forever and will be a constant reminder to the community that their concerns have less value than the 2.4 million that's needed for an acceptable alternative solution. In conclusion, we believe our request is reasonable and is the fairest resolution to all the affected parties. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate your time that you've spoken to us. Thank you very much. So at this time, I'll bring the conversation back to council, and the local ward councillor is Councillor Liu. So Councillor Liu, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, and thank you very much for the delegates. They all have busy schedule and they've been waiting for this moment since 9:30. They're very well spoken. You know, once again, we're back here again. So I still remember last meeting, which is in 2 weeks ago. Council passed a motion, you know, to send a letter to all levels of government, and hopefully, you know, hear back from some of them. And I have to say, this is very disappointing that 2 weeks, zero response from other levels of government. And is even more disappointing as, once again, on the 11th hour, yesterday in the afternoon, council received a letter from the CEO of Electra, you know, very last minute, threatening, you know, the city to accept option 4. Otherwise, it's going to be 90 polls instead of 60 polls. That's not acceptable. You know, the residents, I don't remember if any delegates mentioned that. Since they erected the hydro poles on Leslie, three for sale signs goes up. People are leaving the community because of the hydro poles. Are we here to kick out the residents? Are we here to ruin their quality of life? It is easy to just move the poles to the east side, not in front of their houses. I concurred with Mr. Arenas' comments. Richmond Hill has the obligation, Electra has the obligation to provide power to the business park, no doubt. Electra collect money from the hydro bills. Everyone is benefiting, including the city, except for the residents. The residents are the only losers in this battle. Are we really going to do that? This should be a very easy way out. You know, $2.4 million, you know, electors all along doing nothing, didn't listen to us, didn't engage, and then force us to choose option 4, which is the cheapest way. All those poles, I don't care if it's 60 or 90 poles along Leslie, they're going to be there forever, 50 years at least. It will be in front of those houses for many, many years, while electric collecting money, the city providing power to the business park. There's nothing wrong with it. However, not on the expense of the residents. And this is not fair. Me and the delegates, when we're talking about the community, we're talking about close to 1,000 houses being affected by these poles. What we're doing now is only Major Mac to Princeton. The next phase is going to be Princeton all the way to Elgin Mills. That's another, I don't know, 90, 60 poles. So I would like to, you know, try one more time. It is a shame that we have to fight for the residents on the municipal level. Shame. No one's going to fight for them. We have to fight for them. So I would move that council endorse option 5, which is to move the poles to the east side of Leslie, which they are, you know, where they're supposed to be, and the $2.4 million. I would like to propose as staff. 1 minute. Okay, thank you. I'm moving a motion now. Thank you. Sorry, I'm too emotional, too angry. And the $2.5 million. So and council direct staff to find a funding source, not excluding cost sharing with the developer, with Electra, the region, and the city. $2.4 million. It sounds like a lot, but you know, with the 1,000 houses that's being affected and the property value that being affected, 2.4 million is peanuts. So I hope I can get council support on this one. We got to fight for them. Otherwise, nobody's going to fight for them. Thank you.
Okay, so just before we go any further, I just want to make sure, Mr. Clerk, have we captured the wording? I guess maybe we should put that up on the screen at this point, and then I'll be looking for a seconder. Councillor Munch, you will second it? Okay. Just hold on, Councillor Munch. Our clerk is typing furiously. It will happen momentarily, I think. Okay. So Councillor Munch, do you want to read that before you second it, or go ahead when you're ready?
So if I can just ask the mover on item C, that corporate and financial services be directed to allocate. Can you just add the word "if necessary"? The additional funding required? Or where necessary? We have to ask the mover first, yeah, because I'm just asking so I can forward, guys.
Okay, so Councillor Liu, are you okay with that?
Yes.
Or where
Yeah.
necessary, you know, whatever.
Okay.
Okay, so go ahead, Councillor Munch.
I'm going to say to you, I agree that we got to fight for residents. I do appreciate that we need power and growth needs to move forwards. And I would say to you that with if the residents really want this, I want to thank the delegation. I do listen to the residents. All what I've done every day and what I continue to do is I believe in full transparency and openness in everything we do at government. And we at the local level should be fighting for residents and are fighting for great public policy. As a result of that, the residents did know they were on Leslie Street, and it's a major corridor and it is a regional road. However, and they're near an industrial complex like my ward is up there where I'm at. But I am not at all happy with the letter I got and we got from the electric utilities yesterday. I'm not happy with them allocating where they're at. And I'm going to say to you that this motion is necessary. And we should go together to say how we're going to grow. And that growth, ladies and residents who are saying, I really worry about my cost of my home and I don't want to move away. When we do get growth, that growth pays for things like we're doing right now. And for those residents that say we don't want growth because we want higher taxes and we want to move away, I'm opposed to that. So for those people that say I'm an anti-growther, I'm going to say to you, contrary to what many people are, since the 1971 Suburban Act, of which York Region was created, where we start getting water throughout Richmond Hill, I'm really happy we have water on Leslie Street. Thank goodness we had good leadership in the 1970s, where 100% of the city went and said, no, you got to stop the taking of the farms on Leslie Avenue. And those councillors and that council stood up with the province to create the Green Belt and the Oak Ridge Moraine. And I'm a staunch supporter of the Oak Ridge and Green Belt in exchange for growth in urban settings. And this is an urban setting. So I'm all for the electricity, but I think they should be with the local councillor. They should be going the other side. And we should be encouraging those residents to mobilize with their local councillor. And I'll be happy to help in second as I am right now to say our staff and our council is absolutely behind you. And we'll try to get Electra to pay their fair share, more than their fair share, because they need that power to go elsewhere. And the residents shouldn't be paying for that. And we should be paying for that. We're asking for Electra to show some compassion, to be in our community as partners, and that those poles for power should be trying to move from the other side of Leslie Street from Electra, not from the local property taxpayer who can't afford it, and not from the houses that are coming in who can't afford the housing affordability. So I say that we're going to say to Electra, no, we're going to try to move the motion to bring the power poles as per the request on the other side. Certainly the day before, this has been around for a long time. Local council has been very, very active in this and fighting for his residents, as he has all day today and ever since I've been here for 7 years. So I'm going to say to you, happy to support it. Happy to say to taxpayers, we're not going to pay for it. We want to have residents stay here long-term. And we're happy that the working class aren't going to become the impoverished class, and they can afford to live, work, and play here with some dignity long-term. And I think Electra should understand that when they're doing their design. And if they don't want to go across the street, then bury it or figure it out. But we at the local property taxpayer shouldn't be wrestled with this, and they should be working as much as they can. And if not, at least come to council and give a delegation. So that's my opinion. I really do support the motion to move the polls at Electra's expense, to try to work with the residents, or at least show up. Be nice for them to show up once in a while and give us their, because we do want to be active partners. So that's my position. I thank the mover.
Thank you, Councillor Munch. I've got Councillor Barros as the next person on the list.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question is to the mover of the motion. My question is, what is the additional funding required?
You mean the amount of money?
It says that corporate and financial services be directed to allocate the additional funding required if necessary. What's that number?
Well, and the total cost is 2.4 million. And also on this C, we explore the possibility of shared cost sharing with other parties. So the total is 2.4. I don't have a number. If as Councillor Munch said, a lecturer would like to contribute a whole 2.4, then we don't have to find funding sources.
So is it your position and the secondar's position that if everyone else says, nope, sorry, you expect the taxpayers of the city of Richmond Hill to pay the 2.4 million as per this motion? I just want to understand what myself and others are voting on.
Thank you for the question. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Well, I would say a short answer, yes. But I don't know, where the 2.4 million comes from. It's just from Electra. So I don't know what's the actual number. So it might be less, it might be more, but that's why I'm asking staff to go find funding source. Because if you remember last meeting when staff is recommending option 4, we need $250,000 from and we can allocate the fund from DC charges. So,
Councillor Munch, you've just heard it now. You've seconded a motion that is encumbering the city for $2.4 million, but we're hoping someone else will pick up that tab. But ultimately, the mover's position is that we're going to pay 2.4 if no one else comes to the table. Now, I'm really conflicted when it comes to this particular situation, because I've got residents in my ward that in the past have asked for the city to pick up their garbage because they pay private people to pick up their garbage. And we've said no. Well, if we're willing to throw this kind of money around just to have poles moved, which is outside of our jurisdiction, because we're willing to fight for them. And I agree, we should fight for our residents within our capacity of what our jurisdiction is. If we start throwing around money of this extent, where do we stop when we start saying we're going to fight for residents? So I'm very conflicted. I'll vote for A and B. I will not vote for C. I cannot vote for C. In good conscience, I don't know how the majority of council could vote for C, knowing now the ramifications of how much money we would be taking out of another program somewhere else. $250,000, I think that was something that was doable. But now we're talking $2.4 million. That's half of a soccer bubble. That's like that. We're talking about a lot of money here. I recognize the councilor is just fighting for his residents, and fighting blindly is how I would put it, because $2.4 million, not knowing even where that's coming from.
May I respond to you? May I respond to your
I
question there?
I won't vote for C.
So may I respond to you as you directed?
No, Councillor Munch, if you want to speak on the next round, you may though.
Well, with all due
No,
respect, sir.
Councillor Munch. It's not
So
your turn.
in my remaining time, I'd like to ask the seconder of the motion, Mr. Munch, when you moved this motion, did you intend to encumber the taxpayers of Richmond Hill for $2.4 million? Or did you believe that everyone else was going to come to the table and then staff would have to come back to us for whatever number was left?
So in responding there, I'm going to say to you, as I said in my speech there, when I'm seconding this motion, this council resolution to fight for our residents and fight for our good value proposition, the property taxpayer should not and will not, under my vigor, will not be funding this type of campaign. And with the residents and with I would suppose, where I intend to go is I'd be fighting with my member of provincial parliament, who is looks after the utility under provincial guidelines. We are going to fight, just like Electra sent us a letter. I want us to go back with staff and say, if this council wants to fight for our residents, if you want to expand the hydro, okay, but you need to take into consideration this other area. And Mr. Electra, powers under your guideline, not under ours, as the Ward 1 Councillor Greg, you mentioned. So I'm going to say to you that I don't think that we should in any way, shape, or form have the mindset that we're going to be funding all of this. We should be back fighting for the residents, saying, if necessary, we're willing as a council to go the distance. But in reality, we will be fighting like mad. And good luck trying to collect checks from us when you're not working collectively. And we will work with the utility. We're not going to send a letter arbitrarily. And if they're not going to come and work with us,
Mr. Munch, through the chair, Mr. Munch, my question was, you've now been made aware by the mover of the motion that first sentence says the city will pay if no one else is going to. Is that still your position?
I'm going to say, yeah, because based upon C, the condition on that is, if you read it,
That's all I need to hear. Thank you.
I haven't finished.
I'm
The
done,
corporate
Mr.
financial services be directed to allocate the additional funding required if necessary. It's my position. There will not need any money necessary if our council shows a resolve, as you correctly pointed out, with the leadership you've shown in Ward 1 and continue to show in Ward 1. So when you're doing with the garbage, we should be doing the same thing with Ward 3 to say, you know what, guys, we're going to fight for you. We're
Okay,
not going to
Councillor Munch, thank you. I think you've responded to Councillor Barros's question. You
With
can have a
respect,
second
Chair,
round.
you can't interrupt people
You
mid-sentence.
can have a second round if you wish.
Just don't interrupt during mid-sentence, please.
I see that David Dexter, our treasurer, has his hand up. Mr. Dexter, did you want to chime in?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for the opportunity. If I may make a suggestion with respect to recommendation C, maybe keep it more simpler and say that corporate and financial services report back to council on approaches to funding. And we know that we will be approaching those parties that are mentioned here on the current recommendation C, but if you keep it more lighter, the way I mentioned, that may be more appropriate.
Thank you, Mr. Dexter. Can you just hang on for a minute, though? Make sure Mr. Bandit, have you captured that?
Sorry, through you, Mayor West. I apologize. Treasurer Dexter, if you can repeat that. Report back to council on.
Yeah. Report back on how option 5 will be funded.
Okay.
And that's pretty much all you have to do. And then, of course, we will go about the process with other areas of the city to those parties identified on the screen.
Okay, so I just want to be clear with the mover and seconder. Are you okay with that change?
I'm okay with it, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Director Dexter.
Okay, Councillor Munch, you okay with that?
You bet.
Okay, so Mr. Ban, if you can capture that, and then can we just pause the discussion for a moment to make sure that we capture that, and then we'll put it back up on the screen.
I want to thank the mover and the seconder because you've now changed the complete intent. We are not encumbering the taxpayers of the city of Richmond Hill. We're going to go out and we're going to discuss this and then come back.
Okay.
If there's a shortfall, we'll know. So thank you both very much for that. I can now support it. I couldn't have before, as I don't think anyone else could have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, so we've got it up on the screen here. Councillor Silovitz, you're the next person on the speakers list.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you also to the residents who once again stepped forward. And I want to commend the local councillor for his fight here. It is definitely commendable. However, I agree in part with Councillor Barros that had C not changed, I wouldn't have been able to support this. But this, it behooves us as members of the board, the Corporation of Richmond Hill, to ensure that we know where these funds are going to come from. And if it is going to be $2.4 million, where is that money going to come from? So I appreciate the fact that staff must be further engaged in order for us to figure this out. Councillor Munch said something that is very true, and that is these residents live alongside Leslie Street, and Leslie Street is a major regional corridor with business parks on the other side, on the east side, and Highway 404 right there. So I completely sympathize with them, and I understand their angst, and I'm sure I'd feel the same way. But if electric utilities won't move this to the east side, I don't quite know what we're going to do. With that in mind, if I may ask through you, Mr. Mayor, and I honestly don't know which staff member this would be, it is my understanding that the Provincial Electricity Act trumps everything here, as provincial legislation does. So where does that place us? If Electra can turn around and say that according to the Electricity Act, we can do this, this, and this, where does that actually leave us? And I honestly don't know who can answer that question. It's up to you and staff to perhaps find me someone who would dare.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Silovitz. I actually am not sure either. Mr. Kwan, I don't know whether you or one of your staff may be able to shed some light on that, but you want to try?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'll take a stab at it, but perhaps Mr. DeMilta can also chirp in here on this. But my understanding of the protocols is that Electra is operating under the Electricity Act, and they have an obligation to supply electrical power to their customers under that legislation. The city or any local municipality, in this case, is only a commenting agency, given the fact that the location of the poles is not on city property, it's within a regional right-of-way. So
Yeah.
Electra has done all their due diligence with the appropriate regulatory agencies for the installation of the new lines, but they do operate independently under separate legislation.
Thank you, Mr. Kwan. Does Mr. DeMilta want to add anything? Through you, Mr. Mayor?
Mr. DeMilta?
No, I echo the response of Commissioner Kwan that Electra does not require the city's consent, and it says so right in the Electricity Act, and they can install any equipment as they deem necessary in order to discharge their mandate delivery of electricity.
Thank you very much, Mr. DeMilta. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So that's my point. And I think it's a very important point that the residents must be made, unfortunately, painfully aware that we can ask for this. We can see if we can find the money, but ultimately, Electra, as a provincial entity under provincial mandate, is going to do what they're going to do. So I understand that this is an incredibly difficult position for Councillor Liu, and we certainly support him. I know I do. But at the end of the day, I think there's got to be an understanding that we are not going to be the last word on this under any circumstances. Electra will be, because they are governed by the Electricity Act, which is provincial legislation. And I just want the residents to really and truly understand that. So, I mean, I will support this because I want to support the residents, but I think we're entering into something here that is ultimately it's a fool's errand. But I will do it for the residents and for the local councillor. But I don't hold out much hope here. Sorry. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Silovitz. The next person on the speakers list is Councillor Chan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, first of all, I have to say that I really appreciate that what Councillor Liu has been bringing forward this motion. And even last time we spoke about it, I'm totally understand the great concern and anxieties of the nearby residents. And thank you for the delegates who spoke up today. And as well, this hasn't been just coming on now. It has been since, I believe, almost a year ago, when residents, found out that's what happens in front of their houses with this long pole coming up. So I certainly, for one, want to be supporting the local residents in looking for a solution that would be the least, I would say, maybe intrusive is not the right term, but it's all the 5 options that desirable option 5 is expressed by the local councillor. And I think that's something we ought to support as a group. And that's my first point. The second point is it touches on jurisdictional issue. And through Mr. Chair, perhaps staff could help me understand. If all these posts, doesn't matter west side or right side or east side of Leslie, other than the city of Richmond Hill, what would be the role for the regional municipality of York in this? Through you, Mr. Chair, to staff.
Mr. Kwan?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the hydro poles are located on a regional right-of-way. As such, it's Region of York property. And the region of York, as a partner in the project, would have to authorize the installation or of the poles, which they have already done.
Okay, thank you for the answer. Well, I think the last few words is important. Region has already done, meaning they, I guess, okay or approve whatever the right term is or consent to it. So that was well, not the answer I want to hear, but because I'm trying to leverage where are the other public bodies that we do have 3 representatives, including the mayor and 2 regional representatives in the York Regional Council. And initially my thought was something that through that particular representation, something can be brought up at the York Regional Council to raise the concern of Richmond Hill residents. So that's the path I was trying to get at. The other one is that perhaps through again, Mr. Mayor, to perhaps our treasurer, I appreciate the suggestion of changing C. However, it also makes it a bit uncertain as to whether in fact, in terms of timing, because it doesn't say when it's going to come back. Through you, Mr. Chair, to the treasurer, in the report, it does make on page 3, it does talk about money could have come from the Bayview Northeast Area Specific Development Charge Reserve Fund. The question is, should this see or something around that 2.5 million after accounting for setting off the 250,000 in option 4, could that possibly be coming out from that same reserve fund, or maybe does the reserve fund have that much money? Through you, Mr. Chair. Perhaps through the treasurer.
Through you, Mr. Acting Mayor, right now the reserve, that area specific, which is the Bayview Northeast area specific employment lands, doesn't have that amount of money right now. But that doesn't mean that more money won't come in as developments continue on. But with respect to them funding this situation, we would have to review the assumptions and the substance of the DC background study that was approved by council at the last update to see if it fits within that parameters. And if it doesn't, then we may have to have a discussion with, we would have to have a discussion with the developer in the area about how they could be involved or how it fits in the greater framework of the block that they're developing in. So my guess, I don't have that background study in front of me, that it probably is not completely apples to apples situation. And that we will have to have that discussion with the developer. But until we take a look, staff takes a look at that, I can't give you a conclusive answer on this time.
Thank you. So in closing, I just want to say, number one, I'm supporting the motion in front of us because I think it's important it demonstrates council resolve that we are indeed speaking for and fighting for the residents, which in this case, I think the word has been said, is no one else there to speak up for residents in really try to work out the best solution with the electorate, which is under provincial jurisdiction in terms of controlling things relating to electricity. Point number two is that I share and concur with the moving colleague who mentioned, I would have thought our provincial level of government would have provide a response to the letter that was sent to them since our last meeting of February 9th. And I will continue to suggest, I for one, and I take it the local councillor, and I would call upon residents also to approach our respective provincial representative to further advocate for the issue that the province should look into this, or perhaps even in a funding partner, so that it would not be overburdening the rest of the taxpayers in Richmond Hill. But I think it's the right thing to do. I'm in support of the motion in front of us. The only concern is that because Electra, at the end of the day, I'm seeing and hearing that they can go on without getting consent from Richmond Hill. And if they chose to, I hope they are not, to begin construction on the west side as they want to do later on. My concern is that appears that little we can do at this point in time to stop them. But in the end, I'm hoping for the best, and I hope that if council does really vote on this unanimously, it sends a strong signal, not only that we are fighting for our residents, but to the electorate, we mean business. Please respect the wishes of this council who are duly elected by our officials, and don't do any construction until we look at C properly. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chan. Mr. Kwan, you have your hand up, and if you've got something to add, go ahead.
Thank you for recognizing me, Mr. Mayor. Just it doesn't have to deal with the financing issue per se, but I wanted council to be fully aware that in choosing option 5, the specific details around that option any of the options revolve around the construction and installation of the taller poles for the 4 circuits. So there's still a requirement for an additional lower line, which would carry lower voltage lines. And I'm led to believe that there would still be a line on the west side of Leslie Street, but at a much lower height. I believe that information had been previously circulated in the notices, but I stand to be, I'm trying to verify that now as we speak, but I have Mr. Massaro from our engineering department, our executive director of engineering, to be available for any technical questions on the pole alignments.
That's actually very important. Mr. Massaro, if you have something to add, that's fine. Regional Local Councillor DiPaolo and then Regional Local Councillor Pirelli are the next 2 up after your comments. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, I'm sorry, Councillor DiPaolo, sorry to interrupt. Is Mr. Massaro, do you have something to add before Regional Local Councillor DiPaolo?
Not at this time. Commissioner Kwan articulated very well the information that Electra supplied to us in reviewing all the options. It does still include some sort of additional line on the west side, even if option 5 is selected. That is correct.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, Regional Local Councillor DiPaolo, go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Mayor West. So just before I start speaking, I want to say one thing and make it very clear. The local councillor has done a great job in meeting with residents and informing them and fighting hard for them on their behalf and addressing their concern. I've gone to a couple of those meetings, but I just don't understand where the residents are coming from. I don't understand why they are continually badgering their councillor on this provincial matter. This is not and a regional issue. Not ever did the city of Richmond Hill have any power to change this construction project, to change the location of these poles. We don't have that power now. We don't have that power in the future. All we can do, and that's ultimately what Councillor Liu has proposed, is take taxpayers' money and try to use that money to solve or mitigate the situation. Now, Councillor Liu and I intervened with an alternative, and we didn't force Electra, we asked Electra, and Electra was accommodating. They stopped their construction and they allowed us to go with a different option that cost $4 per household in Richmond Hill, $240,000. But we found that in development charges for the area. We collect charges to service this area for municipal needs, but we allocated those development charges, which could have been a park or other things, but we allocated it to reducing the impact of these poles. And we reduced the size of the poles. That's option 4, which I would support because we can find the money. Now, I hope as a result of this motion, which I will support, that our Director of Financial Services will come back and find out and tell us how much more could be financed through development charges. But we're all fighting for residents here, and we have to fight for every single household in Richmond Hill, because this is the $40 per household solution. It's $40 per household. There's households in Richmond Hill that just can't bear a $40 cost. So that so that we can go outside of our jurisdiction and force an electric utility provision company to construct to provide power to the area in an alternative mechanism than they've deemed that they want to, and they've got approval for from the province and from the region. So the residents in this area have to take their fight to Daisy Way, our MPP, who represents Richmond Hill on a provincial level. I don't understand. Are you putting the same pressure on Daisy Way that you're putting on Castro Liu, your local ward municipal councillor? Pressure on the ministry that's responsible for governing and regulating hydro utilities, because they're the ones who can tell Electra what to do. We can't. The city of Richmond Hill can't tell Electra what to do. It's as simple as that. So council has a simple choice. We all want to fight for you, and we're going to continue, and I support this motion because it continues to take the fight to those other levels on your behalf, and that's what I'm willing to do. But we have to fight for every resident and every household in Richmond Hill, and spending, forcing every person, every home, every family in Richmond Hill to put $40 into solving this situation is difficult to support. My 2 cents. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
You're welcome. Mr. Regional Local Councillor Pirelli, you're next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a very complex issue. My first question is to our solicitor. Mr. Solicitor, if the report comes back that there's an amount of money that the city would have to contribute to Electra, would that be considered some kind of corporate bonusing?
Sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor. On this one here, like I've previously said at this meeting and the previous meeting, Electra can unilaterally install the services that they deem in their sole discretion necessary to discharge their mandate under the Electricity Act. No matter what Richmond Hill does not change that fact. So it's totally up to Electra to do what they want to do. So if Electra decides to go with an alternate option in terms of that funding source, they may look to other players, but it's still completely up to Electra. Like Richmond Hill has no say in terms of what plant that Electra does in York Region's municipal right-of-way. In fact, the Electricity Act is clear that Electra can unilaterally do it even without the region's consent, and it's the region's right-of-way.
No, sorry, Mr. DeMilton, maybe I didn't express my question accurately. My question was, in the past, we have had discussions regarding the legal mechanism in which to give a corporation money. And if the original motion was supported, or if this one comes back with a contribution from the city, for example, let's say, Urbicon or one of those companies says, well, we'll contribute 500,000 and that's it. And then there's a shortfall of $1.9 million. My question to you is, the legal question is, do we have the right to take Richmond Hill taxpayers' money to give it to a corporation to help them out so that they get a bonusing, they get a benefit? That's the question. And bear in mind when you answer the question, that where I'm coming from is this. Imagine if we did that in this case, a future case, Electra, who may, for example, want to put poles or should put poles on the east side of a road, now in future says, you know what, in Richmond Hill, Let's say we're going to put them on the west side. And that way the community be up in uproar and they'll come back to us and give us money towards it and use that as a negotiating tool to get us to change. So back to the original question, Mr. DeMilta, if this council were to consider giving money to get them to change onto the other side of the street, A, would it be considered, is it something that we can legally do? And B, would we be setting a precedent, a dangerous precedent? That's my question.
Sure. Through you, Mr. Mayor, in terms of, so I imagine, and I don't have any specifics, but my best guess is that Electra has an existing contract with the contractor that's going to install these services. If Richmond Hill requests some additional work on behalf of Richmond Hill, if it's going to be consolidating light poles and street lights or some other aspect of that project, Richmond Hill could contract with the same contractor that Electra is contracting with for that specific service, or it could be a subset of the existing contract. So it wouldn't change the fact Richmond Hill would be contracting for services and Richmond Hill would be responsible for the payment of the services that are at the request of Richmond Hill as part of the Electra contract if all three parties are in agreement. So it would be a straight contract. So this it wouldn't be offending the bonusing provisions because we'd be contracting with a contractor, it could be Electra's contractor in this case, for the, whatever work it was to be done, moving poles, consolidating poles, or any of that work. I hope that clarifies. So the answer to your question in short, no, it would not offend the bonusing provision of the Municipal Act.
Wow, I certainly was not expecting that answer, Mr. DeMilta. Are you saying to us that we now have authority to decide where we put the poles? We're going to contract with the subcontractor to say, put them on the other side of the street?
Sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor, no, that is not what I said. I said if it, as part of a tri-party agreement, say, for example, all three parties, the contractor, Electra, it could even be York Region because it's their lands. If all of the parties were to agree on a specific scope of work, then it could be structured in such a way that it would not offend the Municipal Act. It wouldn't offend the bonusing provision of the Municipal Act. That does not change the fact that under the Electricity Act, which trumps the Municipal Act, Electra can unilaterally install any plant that they desire or that they deem necessary to discharge their services. That's the first premise. Electra can do whatever they want and no consent is required. No consent is required of the local municipality that doesn't even own the land, and no consent is required from the region, in fact, the way the Electricity Act reads, to install the plant in the regional right-of-way. Now, the separate question is, well, what if all of the parties agree on an option? If everyone's in agreement and if it's at Electra's desire to consider any alternate option, if Electra decides to do that, it can be structured in a way where the local municipality can fund a portion of it, which would not offend the Municipal Act. If Electra decides, Electra's the gatekeeper here. So if Electra decides that they want to go down that route, it can be structured in such a way that wouldn't offend the bonusing provision. But that's up to Electra.
All right. Fair enough. That just added another level of complexity to the whole situation. But thank you for the attempt at explaining that. We've heard a lot of comments from my colleagues. I think that the elephant in the room is this. We need to change the Electricity Act. We need to lobby our provincial members of parliament, and we need to express to them that we should have, and our residents more importantly, should have some kind of say before they undertake such a project. They should not have, as the solicitor was saying, the sole exclusive right to do as they please. Because had they been forced to at least come to Richmond Hill at some point, we could have had maybe an input on whether those posts went on the east side or the west side. My next question through you, Mr. Mayor, is this. It's been suggested that today, moving the poles to the east side would cost an extra $2.4 million and the local councillor was okay with us as a municipality funding it. My question to you is this: by the time this report comes back, will the cost to move the poles to the east side still be $2.4 million? Or is that the cost today with services continuing? Part B to the question is, will we even be in time to change any of this? In other words, will this all be completed by the time we even get a response back? So part A and B, Mr. Mayor, through you.
Okay, I presume that that's to Mr. Kwan.
Sure.
Okay, Mr. Kwan, I'm not sure whether you have the answer to that, but if you can help us to get closer to an answer, at least, that would be great.
Through Mr. Mayor, I'll give it an attempt. As Mr. DeMilta has indicated, it is really in the hands of Electra. Staff will certainly take away the direction of council and consult with Electra on your intentions. And I would hope that they would be able to provide a fulsome response on the next steps that they would take. But I cannot speak to their line of business in terms of the impacts that it has on their mandate to deliver the service to their customers.
Sorry, maybe I didn't ask the question properly. And my question is this: we're asking corporate and financial services to go back to council. Council's preferred option 5 will be funded. The question I have is, when you're going out there to ask the questions, will that $2.4 million, because we're taking that as the absolute number, $2.4 million, or will that be $3 million by the time you ask the question, because they've been processing and moving ahead and adding more poles and more infrastructure and so on and so forth? Secondly, are the residents aware that there's a second set of poles that are going in to carry hydro there, and how do they feel about those?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the information that is contained in the staff report are estimates. So the final costs are determinative at the time of construction. The city would be billed accordingly by Electra for the additional costs. As I indicated with respect to the notice, previous information on notice, I believe it was contained in the notices on the various options that was distributed previously to the residents on what the actual final design implies in terms of the pole layout and the number of lines on each pole, together with the height of those poles. So I believe there was full disclosure, but whether or not it was fully absorbed or noticed, I cannot speak to that, as staff were not in attendance at any of these resident meetings.
Thank you, Acting City Manager. Through you, Mr. Chairman, to the mover of the motion, Councillor Liu. Are the residents that you've been engaging with, are they aware that the only poles we're talking about now are the taller poles that carry the 4 wires, that to move those to the east side, that there are going to be other poles on the west side? Are they aware of that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, no, I don't think there are another set of poles. And that's the problem with it, because there were no transparency, no consultation. You know, from what they're offering us is 5 options, and they're forcing us to go for 4. Option 5 is only say installation of new distribution line on east side with consolidating street lights, 5.7 million, bracket, additional 2.4 million from current project cost. That's all the information we have. So,
but Councillor, we've heard today, it's surprising to me, as is to you, I suppose, that there's an extra set of poles that are going in, or wires that are going in on the west side, and those haven't even been contemplated. Maybe Mr. Massaro can chime in if he has a better understanding of how that works. Through you, Mr. Chairman, to Paolo.
Regional Local Councillor Pirelli, that's a good question. Mr. Massaro, go ahead and answer. Your time is up, but I can put you down for a second round if you like. Go ahead.
Through the Mayor to Councillor, Regional Councillor Pirelli. When there was public engagement, there were the options that were explored, and I believe the There's a document that was circulated with the members of council present that articulated at a high level what would be encountered and involved as part of each of those options. And in that document that I believe from last summer, some point, articulated the fact that by moving the 4 circuit poles over to the east side, that an additional pole on the west side would still be required.
When you say an original pole, what do you mean? Like another 80 original poles?
As far as numbers, I can't confirm because the high level options that were outlined were just that. They didn't involve detailed design. So it just articulates the fact that in order to move, instead of placing a large pole line on the east side, in order to move it to from the west side to the east side would still then require a pole line on the west side, lower in scale.
So, wow. Mr. Mayor, yes, I'll reserve the right to speak on a second round. I don't want to take any more time.
Okay. Let me know. So I'm the only other person that hasn't spoken yet on this. So this is one of the very impossible situations that we are periodically given at council. And I think this has been a good discussion. And the one that we had last week was also a good discussion that, you know, we are not holding all the cards, yet the expectations are, you know, as so often happens, sitting right here in our hands as municipal councilors, but the power to meet those expectations is not always in our hands. And I think this is a classic example of that. However, I am very hesitant to, well, I was very hesitant to support the original version of this motion because I think that, you know, committing to spending $2.4 million on this is not good for the rest of the community. And I understand that it's good for perhaps for the community that lives in that area. And I'm very sympathetic to that community. I totally understand what they're feeling. I totally, they've articulated their concerns extremely well in the various forums that I've had the opportunity since being elected as mayor to be a part of. But I think the problem with this is that I'm not sure that this is a realistic option, because if it is likely going to cost at least $2.4 million. In the research that I've done on this, I'm quite convinced that it will. And I have sure, it's coming out of a reserve fund that's a development charge reserve fund, but I'm also quite cognizant of the fact that I don't think that the amount of money that we collected in that reserve fund to fund future growth would have included
point of order.
For Councillor Munch, point of order.
Sorry, you just made mention that your research and that we paid for this. I'm not aware of us ever paying.
No, I didn't say that. That's not what I said at all.
I'm sorry. Okay, so maybe I misunderstood. I understood.
I think you did, because
research.
The research that I've done on this Electra issue to be prepared for these meetings, and the staff reports that we all have say it's $2.4 million, and it could easily be more. The development charges that we've collected for this area, where presumably that amount of money would come from, would not necessarily have been collected for that particular item. So that means that if we draw $2.4 million out of that account, I would assume that we would then be short $2.4 million to do something else. So whether we take it from one place or whether we take it from the other.
So point of order again, please.
Okay, Councillor, yes, what's your point of order?
I am not aware. I've never seen anything to the such. You've now mentioned it 3 times. Have we ever paid a utility that we haven't owned? And hold on, you made a mention of money that we've never paid.
Councillor
Munch,
Munch,
ever paid.
Councillor Munch, I didn't say that. And that's not a point. That's Councillor Munch.
Sir, you're making
Councillor Munch, that's not a point of order. If you're disagreeing with me,
you can misrepresent.
If you want to sign up for a second round, then go ahead. What I'm saying though is that I understand this. There are regional roads, unfortunately, in Richmond Hill, are definitely a place that carry power to the various places. We have a very north-south alignment of power utilities. We have them going up. Bathurst, they were originally recently put there. They're very high poles, and they don't look very nice. There's no question. I totally understand where the community is coming from. I think Councillor Liu has done yeoman's work at listening to his residents and doing the very best that he can to advocate. And I really admire that. I think that's very well done. But I think that Electra has gone through an extensive process. I mean, it clearly, from what I've heard described here today, it wasn't perfect according to the stakeholders, the residents in that area. But, it was made fairly clear at the last meeting that they are up against a timeline. They have stopped construction, I think, twice, and they are into a deadline to get the power to the business park by, I think it was June. So I'm not sure that delaying this anymore is going to create a different outcome. I'm not sure that spending $2.4 million on this is something that would be palatable to me, at least. So these are my concerns, and I'm not sure that I can, in good conscience, vote in favor of this. I totally understand what my colleagues have said, and I understand why they might be interested in voting in favor of this, but I don't think that, based on the information that I know, that I'm going to be able to support it. I will tell you, though, that I can't remember where we saw this, but it was in some document that did outline that there would be poles on the west side if the ones that are currently being proposed on the west side were moved to the east side. So that I was aware of that, and so that's another thing that I would be concerned about with this particular motion in front of council at this moment. So those are my comments. I do have Councillor Liu for the first speaker on a second round. I've got now Councillor DePaula and nobody else at this moment. Oh, sorry, Councillor Much. So Councillor Liu, why don't you go ahead?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, for the second opportunity to speak. I really appreciate all the comments from my colleagues, and I have to admit, this is a very good discussion, and I'm glad that all of you shows that you care. Let us not remember why we are wearing pink today. We are saying no to bullies. This is a classic example of how a utility company bully the city, the region.
Point of order.
Councillor Barros, point of order.
I want to say this in the most respectful way possible to Councillor Liu. Procedurally, calling a utility that has the right to do what they're doing, they're not a bully. So wearing pink is a serious situation, and I don't want Councillor Liu to be undermining the fact of what we're trying to bring awareness today by twisting it to try to benefit the situation that's at hand.
Thank you, Councillor Barros.
Electra is not bullying us.
Okay, thank you.
I apologize, Councillor Liu, but I just had to say it. I'm sorry.
Okay,
it's okay, Councillor Barros. Yeah, even though I don't agree, I don't agree with that, but thank you for your comment. Anyways, let's continue. First of all, we don't know where that 2.4 million means. There's never any transparency, as I said, never any consultation. I don't know where is that 2.4, is coming from. So I think if there's something broken in the system, we need to fix it. The Electricity Act trumps the city, trumps the region. I don't think that's right. If something needs to change, let's start with Richmond Hill. So I would like also to add a D to the motion that council request our MPP and our representative from the region to engage with the residents on this matter. I think I've heard the city has no jurisdiction. I understand that, and I can assure you that the residents realize that, but they have nowhere to go. So if a little bit helps. So I would like to add a D.
Okay.
To engage our MPPs and our the representative from the York region.
Okay.
Point of order.
Is capturing that.
Point of order.
Sorry, Councillor Pirelli, Regional Local Councillor Pirelli, go ahead, point of order.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can we please follow procedure? We are speaking to a motion that's before us. With the greatest of respect, if Councillor Liu wants to change the motion, there's a proper procedure to follow. Either an amendment to be made to the motion on the floor, or a withdrawal of the motion, go on to the next speaker and move a new motion.
Councillor Pirelli, I think with all due respect, I think he's making an amendment right now. That's what he's proposing. Councillor Liu, can you confirm that this is an amendment that you're proposing at this time, right?
Yeah, if the mover of the motion can make an amendment, I'm more than happy to do that.
Well, I don't think there's a problem with that in our procedure bylaw, as far as I know, Mr. Clerk.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, while there's no such thing as a friendly amendment in terms of procedure bylaw, this would be a motion to amend.
And he's within his rights to do a motion to amend, right?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
And Mr. Chairman, next time, please ask the question if the speaker is moving an amendment so that I don't have to interrupt on a point of order.
Okay, well, I don't think you have to interrupt. To me, it was obvious, but I'll take that under advisement. If we could make it more clear that we're doing an amendment, I thought that was fairly obvious, but go ahead, Councillor Liu.
Well, thank you, Councillor Pirelli. Yes, I think that council requests Richmond Hills MPP and the region of York to engage with the residents with respect to this matter. Thank you very much. I'm with your indulgence, with all my colleagues' indulgence, I would like to make this amendment. Thank you. To add a D. Yeah.
So we have an amendment on the floor. Councillor Silvitz, are you willing to second?
Information.
Can you just give me a second, Councillor Munch? Councillor Silvitz, are you willing to second that? You're on mute. Okay, hold on. Okay, hold on one second, Councillor Munch.
I am, but I believe it should say Richmond Hills MPPs. We have
Exactly.
Okay, thank you, both Councillor Munch and Councillor Silvitz. Who else wanted to speak to the amendment? Councillor Chan. Okay, hold on. Councillor Chan, Councillor Pirelli, Councillor Munch. Okay. Anybody else? No. Okay, Councillor Silvitz. Oh, sorry, Councillor DePaulo, go ahead. Sorry, Councillor Silvitz, go ahead. Councillor DePaulo, I got you.
No, I have nothing further to say. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, the next person that I had was Councillor Chan.
Thank you for recognizing me. Actually, I was about to second it because I did mention about both the Richmond Hill representative at Queen's Park as well as York Region previously. So that's something that I would support. I believe it was mentioned about MPP Way, but in fact, if I understand it correctly, it's actually in the writing for MPP Parsa. But anyway, we should approach both MPP representing the whole city of Richmond Hill. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I'm in support of the amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Chan. And the next person is Councillor Pirelli.
I want to say this in the most respectful way I possibly can. Councillor Liu, congratulations to you. Once you set your sights on something, you know, the saying is you're like a dog on a bone. You're not going to give it up. And I really commend you for this. But I think what we're doing here is we're setting a false expectation for your residents. These, you know, requesting that the MPPs engage with residents. What does that really mean? We're going to call Daisy Way's office and Michael Parsons' office, okay, engage with the residents. Okay. And then, I mean, it doesn't have any teeth. It doesn't have any substance. I mean, these are all attempts because you don't want to maybe accept the reality. Because the reality of the matter is this. This is a provincial matter. We don't have the say. We don't have any authority. Electra has been crystal clear. This is what we're going to do. Thank you for your input. We're going to continue ahead. They have said to us, okay, we'll pause for a moment. If you want to go grab $2 or $3 million, we'll consider moving it to the other side of the street. We still don't have the facts as to whether there's going to be poles on the west side. I still don't know whether the residents are okay with those poles on the west side once they move the higher poles to the east side. I don't know how much it's going to cost. And we're asking staff and MPPs to go and engage in something that, you know, I equate it to a person on life support. I mean, when there's no brainstem function anymore, the patient is no longer alive. I mean, you can keep them alive mechanically, but unfortunately, sometimes you have to pull the plug and you have to say, there's nothing more we can do. So I commend you for trying to do this, but this has the effect of doing absolutely nothing. I mean, I'm not going to vote against it. Of course not. I say, sure, go for it. But my fear is that we're sending a message to the residents that there's some kind of hope. And sadly, I don't believe that there is any hope anymore. The only thing we can do for future is to speak to our provincial counterparts, not even the region, as the solicitor told us. It was alluded to that the York region by the acting city manager, that York region gave their approval for it. And then we were told by the solicitor that no, approval is not necessary by the region or by the city. They have the exclusive domain is theirs to do as they see fit. That's what we need to change. Sadly, we won't be able to change it for this round of go around. And therefore, we're going to have to change it for the future. But that's where we should be focusing our energy and not give false hope to these residents that something is going to happen. But
thank you.
I'll go along to get along, and I'll support this amendment as well. I mean,
Okay, thank you, Local Councillor Pirelli. Councillor Munch, you're next.
Good day. Through you, the chair, or if the chair wants to answer on behalf of staff or yourself, that's fine. So are we then a commenting agency per se for this, or why would Electra engage us in this manner?
Who are you asking that to?
My question is to anybody that can answer, either staff or yourself.
Out of politeness, Councillor Munch, out of politeness.
Okay, Mr. Kwan is on the screen. Councillor Munch, go ahead, Mr. Kwan.
Through you to Councillor Munch's question. City staff are only involved in this project by virtue of the fact that streetlights are being relocated. So technical staff are involved with respect to the design of those streetlights in relation to the new poles. Otherwise, staff are not involved, and the only other public involvement is through the notifications that Electra has kindly provided to the area residents to inform them of this ongoing project.
So these street lights are on, what street are we talking about?
Councillor Munch, I'm sorry to interrupt, but this is about the amendment at the moment. But
no, the amendment has to do with York Region, and the amendment has to do.
Oh, all right. Okay.
So, go ahead. In case you're unaware, no, I want to answer your point. You may be unaware.
No, I'm not unaware. Just go ahead.
Then why did you raise your question then if you were aware?
I thought you were not speaking to the amendment. We're going back to the main motion after this, but go ahead.
So what part did you not think I was speaking to the amendment?
Councillor Munch, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So this is and I asked the commenting agency, and staff said that we were commenting because of street lights. So are those street lights on Leslie Street York Region jurisdiction, or are they Richmond Hill jurisdiction?
Through you, Mr. Mayor.
I don't know who can answer that. Can Chair, you can answer that, or Commissioner Plank, can you tell me? I don't know.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'll have Mr. Macero verify, but the street light fixtures belong to the city, but they are installed on poles owned and operated by other 8 public authorities.
Through the chair to Councillor Munch, that's correct. There is a series of municipal infrastructure that's owned and operated by the municipality. which includes streetlights as well as sidewalks. It's primarily streetlights and sidewalks that are owned by the local municipality within York Regional right-of-ways.
Okay, so as it relates to Electra, Electra's not usually involved with sidewalks. Is that fair to say?
No, they're not typically involved with sidewalks. I'm merely highlighting the types of municipal infrastructure within regional right-of-ways.
Okay, so we're talking about electricity for this area. So can we stay focused on electricity for the moment? So my question now and where we're going, because I don't really want to talk about all the municipal infrastructure. We're talking about Electra lights on a regional corridor, and we're trying to understand what the Richmond Hills portion of that as it relates to this motion. So can we do that? So can you please explain to us what Richmond Hills' role is as it relates to this motion? Because we're trying to learn what York Region and what the provincial guidelines are. We'll just stay focused with our operations person, seeing if we can right now, because he decided to go there. Go ahead.
Through the chair to Councillor Munch, do you want to speak with our operations personnel? Or would
No,
like
you specifically. I want to deal with you specifically because you're bringing up other issues. So
Councillor Munch, as I said earlier, right now the amendment that we're dealing with that's on the floor is that council requests Richmond Hill MPPs in the region of York to engage with residents with respect to this matter. It sounds to me like you're speaking more to the main motion.
No, again. So we keep going back and forth. I ask you if you understand. I'm sure it's not taking my time, but when you're bantering back and forth.
No, I'm sure it's not taking up your time, but my concern is
we're trying to understand when I asked you earlier, do we understand the differences between when you said we talk about the motion, and then you said yes, we are speaking to the motion. So I want again.
Well, right now it sounds a lot like you're talking to the motion, not the amendment. The amendment is about reaching out to the MPPs in the region of York to engage with residents. If you're speaking about that, that's fine. If not, it would be more appropriate to be speaking about the things you're talking about now in the main motion.
Thank you. So as it relates to this amendment, we are talking about the region of York, which is another level of government. So I'm going to try to explain this as I understand the governance and the rule of law, which maybe we disagree with or people want clarification. I understand that York Region is a different level of government that is a upper tier from Richmond Hill. And in the 1971, when the region was created and they had right of way and they had jurisdiction, and seeing the motion talks about York Region, and it also mentions MPPs, which is a provincial, which is yet another higher tier level of government of which we get our powers from. I'm trying to understand the separation of powers as it relates to this amendment. And as staff are bringing in statements of, why are we involved? Are we a commenting agency, which is my initial overture. And then we have staff and yourself commenting that they know, but we don't have clear language. And then we have one of our staff members start talking about sidewalks. I didn't bring in sidewalks. They're bringing sidewalks for reference. So I have to speak to that because that's what staff are talking about on an issue that I do want to talk about the motion. It was other people who want to talk about sidewalks, which is what not this motion is about. So we're trying to get back to the point to talk about what the motion is, so we don't waste staff and council's time, so that we can be clear on language, so that we can move this issue along. So that's where I'm trying to stay focused on this. I would appreciate if you would try to get others to be focused on this issue as well, because I don't want to talk about sidewalks unless they want to talk about it, and we'll just go for round and round, be here till all night. So coming back to this issue of this motion amendment that's forward to us, I'm trying to understand what Richmond Hill's portion of this, why we're spending so much of our time talking about this, so that we're all clear as council, because there's been lots of commentary by many members of council as to what we're doing. Do we have jurisdiction? Do we not have jurisdiction? And I think it's really good. We've seen we already today need to have an education session. Maybe all of us need an education session as to how our role of government and what are our guidelines and who's involved and why we even do what we do. So coming back to, I don't even want to talk about sidewalks, but if our staff want to talk about sidewalks, happy to talk about it. It's not really what the motion is about, happy to do it. I'm trying to understand what our role is as it relates to utility, so that we can have this topic about the region and MPs, so we can be effective.
Okay, Councillor Munch, your time is up.
How can my time be up when you're interrupting and asking for clarification?
The clock stops when that happens, Councillor Munch, your time is up. Councillor DiPaolo, you are the last person I have registered on the amendment to speak.
Yeah, I just wanted to apologize to MPPY. I did misspoke earlier, and this entire project in question is in the boundary of the Aurora Oak Ridges Richmond Hill riding, which is Michael Parsa. It should be the one that we approach on this. Since it's in the amendment, I just wanted to bring that up. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I don't have any other speakers on the amendment, so I think we can call the vote. All those in favor of the amendment? All those opposed? That carries unanimously. Thank you very much. We're back to the main motion.
Point of information
Go ahead.
is the minutes, are they going to show that this passed unanimously, or do we have to do a recorded vote?
According to the clerk, he's nodding. It'll be showed that it's passed unanimously. Councillor, thank you. Okay, so back to the main motion. I believe Councillor Liu spoke and he made the amendment. So the next person I had registered is Councillor DePaula.
Again, Mayor West, I just had my hand up because I wanted to correct that mistake I had made earlier. I do support the motion. I want to help the residents. I want there to be a way other than us just using tax dollars to buy ourselves out of a situation that needs to be reformed. As I think we definitely need to go the next step to request a change in the way hydroelectric poles are installed and the municipality's role in that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Munch, we have you on the second round.
Thank you. So it's unfortunate that we have to be so clear on defining language as to take people like my time up. So every word we have to define, because now we've learned that staff and council don't have the same context to the Webster's dictionary as I have anyway. And I did call up Webster's, by the way. So when we talk about different topics today. Ladies and gentlemen, we are a commenting agency, which is why we are involved here. We don't always have jurisdiction, but nor does TRCA, nor does Metrolinx, nor when we have a planning criteria. So if I ever see a commenting on a staff report and when I hear a comment from some staff say, or council, well, it's taking us so long because we have to wait for these commenting agencies. We don't need necessarily power. We work collectively for the best interest of the people that we're serving. Electra's servicing residents and businesses. We're servicing residents. We're under the umbrella of the province. Electra's under the umbrella of the province. I think that we can work on behalf of the residents of the area. And I think our job should be on trying to work with the residents to fight both today and tomorrow, not just the people from yesterday, but the people that are committed to trying to serve. And the local councillor has heard, and we've got delegations here imploring our council to fight for the residents, to work with Electra to find a solution to this problem. This council should be unanimous to fight for residents who have come up and said, please, we have real safety concerns, real quality concerns. Will you please get Electra to do their very, very best, because they want to grow and we want them to grow. The residents have said they want to grow. We want to work collaboratively. We do not work for Electra. They are a monopoly delegated by the province of Ontario. The motion says, in part, let's get the MPPs involved. My expectation is that all our York regional representatives, the 3 of them that are there, will fight for the interest of our residents at the region, just like last regional meeting when we were asked to pay a surcharge in Richmond Hill for Markham to get their subway station, of which our mayor moved a motion to say we don't want to have public input because we want to pay for Markham's infrastructure. I find it remarkable. Today, we are fighting on Electra on the same front. If Frank Scarpitti can negotiate for Markham on behalf of Richmond Hill at our cost, why can't we fight for the residents with Electra for the best interest of our community? I'm assuming our regional representatives, at least I would hope and I pray that they're representing the best interests of Richmond Hill and our residents at the region. I would hope that our MPPs are going to fight that. I would hope that we on council are going to say, are you kidding? Our property tax base is going to fight for Electra. I'm going to be willing to bet that Electra doesn't want us to take control, because if we do pay, we will take control of every aspect of that asset that we're involved with. I'd be willing to bet you if they don't want to give us that under the classification. And just like we are a commenting agency, I would hope that if we give weight to TRCA or any other commenting agency, that they would do the same. But listening to staff today and listening to others, and if we're talking to about jurisdiction, I guess they should carry no weight if that's the role of our head of council or others to say, hey, no, you know what, we don't want to go there because we want to fight for Electra. I fight for residents and the quality of life of the people in our community. And I'm going to say to you, the Ward 3 residents and the Ward 3 councillor who's fighting like crazy, I'm going to continue to do so. By the way, I first got elected by fighting Canada Post for this community, and this community fought to get me elected. And when I got elected, Aurora, Tom Marakis, the mayor of Aurora, fought the same way we did here, and those residents lost the service. We kept our service because we fight for residents, and we can fight those bureaucracies or other levels of government or other sister agencies. And we should unanimously say, we're fighting for our residents. We're going to tell Electra we're committed. We expect you to come to the table, and we want to work collaboratively to find solutions. It's not a one-way street and about power. It's about serving residents first and the quality of life of our residents first. I applaud the motion on the best interest. I look forward. I will ask for a recorded vote to see who's going to fight for the residents of Richmond Hill first. Thank you.
Okay, I've got the last speaker on the second round. I have down as Councillor Pirelli. Councillor Pirelli, I think you got something over your camera. I can't see you.
Can we have the motion on the screen, please?
Councillor Pirelli, are you there? Oh, there you are. Good. Thank you. You're back. Oh, you're on mute now, sir.
Oh, sorry. Like I said earlier, I really commend, Councillor Liu for continuing to fight. My fear is that, at some point, we're giving false hope to the residents, and that's not a good feeling to have. Sometimes, in a way, I would have hoped that Councillor Liu just would have made his motion on behalf of his residents to finance the $2.4 million from the tax base and see if council could support it. At least it gives them an answer. Sorry?
Point of order?
Councillor Munch. Point of order?
There's nothing on this motion that says that people are on the hook for 2.4. In fact,
okay, Councillor Munch, that's not a point of order. You're just
what are we going to speak about anything then?
No, it's not a Councillor Munch. It's not a point of order. That's my ruling. Councillor Pirelli, continue.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Tom, I think you were right. You had a point of order. I wasn't speaking to the motion. You're absolutely right. I apologize. That being said, I'm going to support A, B, C, and D. I'm not holding out much hope that Electra is going to change their mind. I don't think we have enough time to engage the province to change the Electricity Act. And I really hope that the residents in that neighborhood can find some peace with what's going on. I really wish them the best of luck. My heart goes out to them because I know what it's like to live in a neighborhood and then have something drastically change your quality of life. It happened to me when I backed onto an empty field and then I had the side of a building 5 feet off my back fence. And in order to mitigate that, I had to plant some trees. So I want the residents to know in that area, there's obviously a few factors that need to be considered. So I would like to move an amendment. I would like to add E, and I apologize, it just came to me right now when I was thinking of my own situation at my home. I'd like to add an E, Mr. Chairman, and that E is this, that the city staff undertake to reach out to the residents and to help to consider the mitigating of the visual aspect of those poles by planting trees along the flankage of their property so that when they do look out if the trees are strategically placed, we accomplish two things. Number one, we take away the negative visual impact. And hold on a second, someone's knocking at my door. Yes? Oh, there's nobody there. So with that, it accomplishes two things. One, the negative visual impact to the neighborhood, and two, for the environment, it's great to plant trees. So I'd like to add an E to say that staff undertake to examine how we could strategically place trees in the regional right-of-way so that when those gentlemen with those pictures are looking out their bedroom windows and so on, a couple of trees strategically placed around those poles might eliminate or at least mitigate the visual sites. That would be my amendment, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Ban, have you captured that? I just on a practical note, as much as I appreciate this motion, I'm not sure how city staff are going to be able to plant trees in the municipal right of way, and particularly not under hydro lines. But it might be better to ask to present this at a regional council meeting. But I guess I'll wait to hear from staff on that.
Well, first of all, Mr. Mayor, we're not planting, I never said we're planting them under the hydro lines. I said between the residents and the poles themselves.
Okay, on the regional right of way.
Yes, on the regional right of way. We'll undertake that exercise and staff can reach out to the residents, see if that's an option, and to the region. Of course, we would need their permission in order to plant trees. I don't think that they would, and I'd be happy to move that if it's passed here. If staff come back to us and say that the residents would like us to undertake that, the only thing I'd add, Mr. Ban, is that, and that we ask Electra to pay for the planting of those trees. Since they never came to us originally to ask us where we would like those poles, I think a small token of their good faith would be to pay for the planting of those trees. At least we make an attempt to mitigate the visual soreness of those things. So if I could just see the motion on the screen, make sure it's okay, and then we can get a seconder and Councillor Barros. I think that's what he was alluding to. And we'll move on from there. That the city undertakes to reach out to the residents of the region of York, to the residents and the region of York to help to consider the mitigating the visual aspect of the hydro poles by planting trees along the region of York's right of way and to request elected to pay for the planting of the trees. Beautiful.
Okay, so do we have a seconder for that amendment? Okay, Councillor Liu. All right, anybody want to speak to that? Councillor Silvitz.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. The only thing I want to say is, and I understand the why this is up here, and I don't disagree with it. But again, the residents must understand that should, and I use that very, very shakily, should trees be agreed to be planted, they're saplings. They don't plant mature trees that are 10 feet or 15 feet high. So again, this serves, I'm sorry, but with all respect to the mover and the seconder, I don't believe that this serves the purpose that they wanted to. So
point of order, Councillor Pirelli, go ahead.
I want to make my motion clear. I'm not planting saplings that are going to take 20 years to grow.
Okay, that's not a point of order, Councillor Pirelli.
Yeah, it is.
No, it's not.
Someone's speaking to my motion.
It's not a point of order. Councillor Silvitz, are you finished?
Well, we're not planting saplings. Let's put it that way.
Thank you, Councillor Silvitz.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I felt that needed to be said because
thank you.
they don't know, the city, neither the city nor the region plants mature 10-foot, 15, 20-foot trees.
Okay. Anybody else on the amendment? Okay, voting on the amendment. All those in favor of the amendment? Okay, recorded vote. Councillor Silvitz called that.
Mr. Mayor, was voting on the motion to amend. Councillor Silvitz.
No.
Councillor Barrows. Yes. Mayor West.
Yes.
Councillor Munch. Sorry, Councillor Munch, if you can unmute yourself, please.
York Region pay for our trees.
Regional and local Councillor DePaula.
Yes, yes.
Councillor Chan.
Yes.
Regional and local Councillor Pirelli.
Absolutely.
Councillor Liu.
Yes.
That motion carries only.
Okay, thank you. All right, back to our main motion speakers list. I've got Councillor Barrows next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to go back to the main motion, and in, I believe it is section C, when it speaks to staff reporting back to council, they use the word will be. Is that correct in what I saw there? It's not on the screen right now.
Mr. Clerk.
Pardon me.
Yeah, so that's correct. So to the treasurer, option 5, it says will be funded. So to the treasurer, does that indicate to you that you're going to report back on the funding source and that we still have allocated $2.4 million?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that doesn't make that assumption, no.
Okay, because I want to be extremely clear to everyone. I don't want someone coming back later saying, well, we interpreted it, because if you read it in plain English, it says that corporate and financial services be directed to report to council on how council's preferred option will be funded.
Good point, Greg.
I'm suggesting, and I apologize, but like, unless we can do some sort of a technical amendment without having to go through another whole speakers list, I think it should say could be funded.
I doubt there's any objection to that, Councillor Barrows. It's a good point.
So if we can just change will to could, I'm good with that.
No, that's fine. I unless somebody objects, I think we can easily change that. I seriously think that was the intention.
I do too. I just want to be careful because this is a hot potato.
It's a good point. It's a very good point.
Okay, I'm good otherwise. Thank you.
Okay. All right. I don't have anybody else on my speakers list at the moment. Then I think we're ready to take the vote, and I think a recorded vote has been called. So, Mr. Clerk, I think the recorded vote was called, I think, by Councillor Silvitz.
Thank you, Mayor West. Through you, Mayor West, voting on the main motion as amended. Councillor Silvitz.
Yes.
Councillor Barrows. Councillor Munch.
Yes.
Mayor West.
No.
Councillor Liu.
Yes.
Regional and local Councillor DePaula.
Yes.
Councillor Chan.
Yes.
Regional and local Councillor Pirelli.
Absolutely.
Main motion as amended carries only.
Okay, thank you, Council. We're got one more set of delegations. Delegation number 12.15 on the item 13.3, which is the update or amendment to the noise bylaw. So the first speaker that we have is Mr. Graham. Mr. Graham, are you there? Oh, there you are. So Mr. Graham, if you can unmute yourself and turn on your your camera. You can start whenever you want. You've got 5 minutes to address council. Oh, Mr. Graham, I think you're on mute still, sir.
Okay, how's that?
It's fine. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for hearing me. My wife and I have lived in Richmond Hill for 9 years now. Over 25 years ago, the Ontario Building Code was amended to include provisions that were intended to protect residents from noise generated by neighbors and by mechanical equipment, such as garbage compactors and elevators. The code introduced sound transmission classifications for floors, ceilings, and demising walls.
Mr. Graham, I'm so sorry to interrupt you. We have lost quorum. So can I just get you to hold on for just a second? I'm really sorry about that.
Sure.
Okay, we got it back. Go ahead, sir. Sorry about that. My apologies.
Should I start over?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay. All right. Yes, my wife and I have been residents of Richmond Hill for 9 years. Over 25 years ago, the Ontario Building Code was amended to include provisions that were intended to protect residents from noise, from neighbors, noise generated from neighbors, and by mechanical equipment such as garbage compactors and elevators. The code introduced sound transmission classifications for floors, ceilings, and demising walls. STCs were strictly enforced by building inspectors and acoustical engineers. If code requirements were not met, occupancy would not be granted by the building department. In January of 2020, the acoustical requirements of the building code were updated to be more stringent. In the fall of 2020, we filed a complaint with the Bylaw department regarding our neighbor's air conditioning unit. The unit was found to be in non-compliance, and an order to comply was issued. The order was allowed to expire, and no action was taken by the city of Richmond Hill. In the early summer of 2021, the issue continued. The Bylaw department attended and took decibel readings, and although the readings exceeded the allowable limits, the unit was deemed to be in compliance as it only ran for 10 minutes. On the day that the readings were taken, the outdoor temperature was about 20 degrees Celsius. As the weather became warmer, the unit would cycle on for 30 and 40 minutes at a time, and often longer. The unit would also run well into the late evening hours when temperatures would drop off below 20 degrees Celsius. We advised the Bylaw department of this, and no action was taken. We further went to the expense of engaging an acoustical consultant to visit our property and write a report. Although the report clearly indicated non-compliance, the Bylaw department advised us that no further action would be taken. In previous years, my wife and I would enjoy quiet time in our backyard after work every day. As a result of this incessant noise, we are unable to enjoy any time in our outdoor private space. In addition, my wife has suffered headaches and sleepless nights on several occasions. The serious side effects of sleep deprivation are well known and well documented. As the city has done nothing to respect or protect our rights as property owners, we have been forced to consider legal action against our neighbor. We are strongly opposed to any change to the current bylaw, as it would allow this problem to continue to affect our health and the enjoyment of our private property, and would further take away any legal recourse that we may currently have. In addition, we do not understand how this proposed change is expected to benefit residents. While the province of Ontario has increased standards to protect property owners from excessive noise, the city of Richmond Hill seems to be moving in the opposite direction. Instead of changing bylaws in favor of disrespectful residents, we would hope that the city would compel its bylaw enforcement department to do its job. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Graham. Okay, we have one more speaker on our list today, Mr. Chapnick, but unfortunately, he's informed us that he wasn't able to stay all this time. He's been waiting since 9:30, so he's not able to be. Oops, sorry.
He's here.
Oh, I'm sorry, he is here. My apologies, Mr. Chapnick. Welcome. Oh, you're not making any sound. I don't think you're muted though.
How's that? Can you hear me?
There you go. Go ahead. Thank you for waiting.
Thank you. Yeah, you managed to squeeze me in, and I'm even wearing pink today, see? My name is Brian Chapnick. I am an acoustical engineer, the kind that Dean was just referring to. I live at 110 Arnold Crescent. I have a PhD in mechanical engineering. I'm a licensed professional engineer with over 30 years of experience in the areas of acoustics, vibration, and noise control. And in addition to my work with clients from various areas of the economy, I teach a course in noise analysis and control to fourth-year mechanical engineers, being students at McMaster University. So I do know a bit about what I'm talking about when it comes to sound, measurement of sound, the assessment of sound. I've reviewed the changes to the bylaw, and I've actually had a discussion with Ms. Steele about it when it was first put forward back in November. And I don't disagree with some of the directions that the proposed changes are taking with respect to the air conditioning noise bylaw. I do think that the direction, so right now, I don't know how familiar you all are with the existing bylaw. The limit for noise from an air conditioner at your neighbor's property, anywhere where they might receive the sound, is a hard number, which is 50 decibels. Okay, well, 50 decibels approximately reflects the background sound in a normal kind of residential setting. But of course, there's variability from location to location. And partly what this change wants to address is, well, why should we limit air conditioners to a hard number like 50 decibels when somebody's living really close to a busy road and the levels from traffic are much higher than that? And I agree with that principle. That principle is well ensconced in provincial guidelines for the assessment of noise. When you get ambient noise levels that exceed some exclusionary minimum target, you should be able to use that ambient noise level as your new target. So that makes a lot of sense, and that is what is done throughout the province of Ontario when one assesses noise. I've put a slide on here to show you what this situation kind of looks like. That moving line with the hatch under it is your ambient noise. It goes up and down. It includes things like road traffic. It includes wind. It includes some dogs barking in the distance and a plane flying over and whatever happens in the period that you're measuring. And so it's known as time varying sound. In order to assess that level, what you have to do is take an average, and what's taken isn't a linear average because sound isn't linear. It's measured on a logarithmic scale. And so what they do is take an energy average, and you come up with a number that represents the overall average energy in that period. And as you can see from the graph that I've put up here on the left-hand side, that average is set towards the higher end already of the typical sound levels that occur, because it's the peaks that tend to set it. It's the higher aspects of it. So it's not right in the middle, which would be what would be called the L50, and it's not down at the bottom, which is another descriptor, which would be called the L90. It's somewhere up maybe 2/3 of the way between the lowest number and the highest number for a typical variation of sound. So you see that line is the ambient level. Now you can imagine if we said that the limit was going to be that ambient level plus 5 decibels, you would never hear any other sound in your environment but the air conditioner next door. So essentially, by proposing a target limit of ambient plus 5 dB, which is what the current proposal is on the table, you're saying that that residents should have to listen to their neighbor's air conditioner as the dominant source of noise in their backyard. And I don't think that is reasonable. It's not how other noise sources in Ontario are assessed. And what we should do is, and I'm recommending to you, is to have an amendment to the motion or to the proposed wording of this bylaw, which takes out the 5 plus 5 dB from the suggested limit.
Mr. Chapnick, your time is up. Could you just wrap it up briefly?
Yep. So that's the main thing. I suggested, I had already provided a written summary that suggested a couple other tweaks to the wording. They had suggested a 15-minute assessment period. I think it should be 20. But all in all, the main thing is this 5 decibel increase on the ambient level, which I think should be denied. But we should approve the greater of 50 decibels or the ambient to allow for higher ambient in areas near busy roadways and things like that.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Chapnick. We appreciate your expertise here today. So we'll bring it back to council as that has exhausted our delegate list. And so we have a staff report and a motion in front of us. I'm Councillor Pirelli. I've got you for speaking. Would you like to move that staff report? Or sorry, the recommendation, or what would you like to do for a motion?
Thank you. I'll get to that in a moment. I've had extensive conversation with Director Steele. And the only issue I had with the staff recommendations and this new bylaw regarding air conditioners is regarding the point of reception. And the provincial standard, as I was told, is at a windowsill. And I think I mentioned this before, no one's standing on their windowsill with their ear on the windowsill. And so to take a reading at a windowsill when there's nobody there kind of doesn't make any sense. The whole point of a noise bylaw is so that people aren't offended by the noise. If no one's there to hear it, there's nobody being offended. But, you know, I would like to see that move to a simple point of reception and remove the portion that states at a windowsill. I think, you know, the province, notwithstanding the fact the province has that wording, I disagree with the province on this one. I think it should be a point of reception. Now, if someone, for example, is complaining that there's noise coming from a neighbor's air conditioner, that's a fair comment. They have a right to quiet enjoyment on their property. But if they have a dining room window that's overlooking the neighbor's property and there's an air conditioner there, the reality is that, you know, unless they're standing by the window, I think the measurement should be taken inside the room, because that's where the people are standing. That's where, because the rest of the bylaw speaks to where people are more likely to receive it, not at the fence line, but if you have a patio and you're standing, you know, lying on the patio or sitting at the patio having a snack, that's where we're going to take the reading from. And I just want it to be crystal clear that we be consistent. If you're going to take the reading on a patio, because that's where people are standing, then we should do the same if they're inside their window. And let's say within 1 foot away from the window, that's where people might be standing. They're not going to be on the exterior windowsill. So the only change I would make, if we could put the bylaw in front of us, is to change the windowsill to 1 foot within the structure. And of course, if the offending neighbor, so the offended neighbor, wants to allow bylaw to come into their property and take that reading, and I think that's fair. And if they don't want to, I would suggest that then it's really not bothering them that much, because that's the only objection that I can see, is that the offended neighbor might say, well, I don't want you coming into my home. I think if they're going to make that complaint, we have to be able to verify that the complaint is real, that it's offending them, that that's where they sit, 1 foot inside the window. And I suspect that we will find a difference in reading on the exterior of a windowsill versus 1 foot inside the structure. The simple fact that how much the window is open, or how big the screen is, the tightness of the mesh, and the added 1 foot with those restrictions and barriers, could it be enough to change the decibel reading from ambient noise +5 to ambient noise +4? And I think that we got to give everybody a fair opportunity to make sure that everybody's rights are being protected, both those of the offender and the offendee. So that would be my motion, Mr. Chairman, that we change the windowsill to 1 foot inside, and that's it. And we can move on with this bylaw. Thank you.
Thank you. So just before we get a seconder, Mr. Clerk, are you capturing that? Okay, so while we're waiting for the clerk to bring that up on the screen, I need a seconder for that motion. I don't see a seconder for the motion. Oh, I see Councillor Munch. Councillor Munch, just hold on, we're just bringing it up. Here we are.
Through you, Mayor West, to the mover of the motion. The current bylaw as it stands, which is to be amended, I believe you're suggesting to add in an additional paragraph to the bylaw to amend. I'm not aware of this section. I'm aware if the acting commissioner is aware of which section that you would like to amend within the 4320 noise bylaw overall.
Okay, Ms. Steele, could you weigh in on, I would, my thought process would be that we would put that in the motion, Mr. Clerk, as opposed to in the bylaw itself. But Ms. Steele, if you'd like to help us here, that would be great.
Through you, Mr. Chair, Mayor West. So you're correct. The measurement location taken at the sill when it is an indoor complaint doesn't appear in the bylaw. Actually, it's in our standard operating procedure, and that's where we identify where the measurement is taken specifically in the case of indoor, because it's a procedural thing.
Okay, so would it not be better then to maybe just capture that as a part of the motion as opposed to part of the bylaw?
Yeah, I think that's one way. Through you, Mr. Chair, you could approach it. You could put it in the motion with the you could say with the procedure identifying the location for interior measurements being 1 foot inside the window, if you'd like.
Okay, I'm getting a nod from Regional Local Councillor Pirelli. Okay, we'll just wait for Mr. Clerk to capture that, and then we'll be, Councillor Munch, you can speak as a second round. You can go now if you want, or you can wait till it comes up.
I'd like to just read it to make sure I'm speaking.
Fair enough.
What's actually being said.
Fair enough.
Tom, all I'm saying is that everything else is fine. I just, the actual physical measurement to be taken when the bylaw officer goes outside, if it's a complaint from inside the home, for the reading not to be taken on the exterior windowsill, but on the 1 foot on the interior of the home. That's the only change, practically.
Okay. Councillor Pirelli, sorry, just to clarify, are you talking about through an open window or through a closed window?
No, the idea is that if their window's open, they're enjoying the fresh air. You take the reading inside the window.
Through an open window or
through the open window, yes.
Okay, that's what I thought. Okay, so we got that up.
Back to the matter is, Mr. Chair, the change that Mr. Pirelli is making is no way in all in front of us today. What's in front of us is the bylaw, the standard operating procedure, which is a completely separate set of internal staff documents, isn't in front of us right now. If we just approve this motion, we're not going to be approving the new bylaw at all.
Well, yeah, I actually agree with you, Councillor Barros. I think, Mr. Clerk, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't want to put words in Councillor Pirelli's mouth, but I think you wanted to go with the staff recommendation A, B, C, and this would be a separate recommendation. So the total the total motion that he's moving is actually the whole motion with D
okay.
as well. So it's not actually an amendment, it's the motion that's being moved. And I think that's what you're saying, Councillor Barros, is that correct?
That is correct, and it wouldn't be an amendment because it's his motion.
We're vehemently agreeing.
Yep.
I don't know who said amendment. This is my motion.
No, exactly, and that's what we've captured here. So
right, my motion is to state, Mr. Chairman, that if we're going to pass this bylaw, I want to make sure that in order to enforce the bylaw, that the standard operating procedures reflect readings taken inside the structure 1 foot from the window, as opposed to on the windowsill.
Right, and that's what we've captured, I think, in front of us. So that's great.
Thank you.
Okay, so Councillor Munch, you're next. Go ahead. You're as a second.
Yeah, good day. So I think it's important that we've been discussing these discussions about noise around air conditioning and soon to be barking dogs and other things. And it's going to continue for the foreseeable future. I appreciate the delegates coming forward. For those of us that are in the amplitude and frequency mode, I did that for a number of years as well. Fully understand how tough it is for our bylaw staff and the measuring and the implications of that. So I think important to get clarification as to where they're measuring from and what the terms are is only a good news story. So every step we can to get clarification. And as council members, I hope saw today and realized once again, we have to go be doubly down on definitions of every word, because otherwise people may misconstrue or might interpret things differently when we have to use words like, windows or open door or, what regards a priority or unique. So what I thought would be standard common sense, I guess I've learned once again why we have very good lawyers who get paid the good money, because we can't define words collectively. So this motion does that. It's a start for us to have more clarity and to try to give our staff the opportunity. And I thank the mover and happy to second it. So that's it. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Munch. Anybody else on the motion in front of us? Oh, okay. I'll speak then. Oh, sorry, Councillor Chan, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I was actually would like to, through you, direct questions, clarification from, I got in this case, Acting Commissioner Steele. I think that one of the delegates, Mr. Brian, who certainly has expertise in the issue, raised a number of questions, both in his delegation today, also in written material. The question I have is specifically relating to the reference a number of times about the legislative exemption for special delivery types, and reference in the report, the staff reports mentioned about Municipal Act. And I believe that written comments that come in also raise questions on the reference whereabout in the legislation for this exemption. So can I seek clarification through you, Mr. Chair, from our staff?
Ms. Steele, I think that's directed towards you.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mayor West. So I think Mr. Chapnick maybe missed, there was a bill, it was called Bill 215, and it's called the Main Street Recovery Act. And it included several minor amendments to different acts, including the City of Toronto Act, the Highway Traffic Act, and the Municipal Act. And it was given royal assent on November 30th of 2021. And it basically, we used it to draft our bylaw. It prohibited municipalities from regulating delivery in connection with delivery of goods in those cases that we've listed in the bylaw. So our bylaw is basically parroting exactly the Municipal Act.
Okay, so thank you. So basically, this is a particular, I would gather, will be an amendment to ensuring that our municipal bylaw would be in compliance with the provincial changes. Okay, I saw the nodding. Okay, because I, for one, have been getting complaint from residents who live close by the commercial establishment that doing delivery, and the expectation is that there's no delivery on Sunday and statutory holiday, and as well as not between the time, well, it's mentioned here between 9 p.m. and 7 a.m. So I just want to be absolutely clear. So upon adopting what we have in front of us, when the motion here, that means it's no more restriction, period, in terms of prohibition of the delivery of these commercial deliveries. Is that correct? Just the clarification through you, Mr. Chair, to Commissioner Steele.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, that's correct. Under the Municipal Act, the municipality does not currently have the ability to regulate or prohibit noise made in connection with delivery of retail business, restaurants, hotels and motels goods, and goods distribution. So we've captured all of the delivery that we can, but we don't have the authority to do that regulation right now.
Thank you. Well, it's nothing specific in this particular motion, but I'm not going to make any amendment here, but I would say that I would ask that and request staff to consider if this is being communicating to the public, and note be made that there was no longer restrictions or exemptions. Well, actually there will be exemption. There's no more restrictions in terms of the delivery of for retail or commercial goods. There was basically now no restrictions at any time from a noise perspective. So those are my comments, and thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you for your response. Our acting commissioner Steele. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. The next person I have is Councillor Liu.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Chan actually made a very good point, and I have the same concern. So through you, Mr. Mayor, to Ms. Steele, what is the definition of delivery noise? And what's the difference between delivery noise and loading and unloading noise? That's a different, right? So, through you, Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead, Ms. Steele.
I'm through you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just looking up whether there's a formal definition in the existing bylaw, and there is not. In the bylaw, it's called loading and unloading. And in the Municipal Act, they called it delivery. So they are essentially the same thing in our bylaw.
Oh my God. Okay, well, thank you for the information. Thank you. No further question.
Okay, thank you. The next person is Councillor Silovitz. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor West. Just one question quickly through you to Ms. Steele. The added D to this noise bylaw amendment, in keeping with what you were saying previously to Councillor Chan, can we do that? Like, does that in any way preclude us does the Municipal Act in any way preclude us from adding such a very specific amendment?
Through you, Mayor West. No, item D is doable. It just means that staff would go inside houses to take measurements rather than staying outside. But there's nothing precluding us from doing that.
Okay, thank you. That satisfies me. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. West.
Thank you. So I'm next on the speakers list unless there's anybody else on the first round. Okay, seeing none. Okay, Councillor Silvitz kind of might have answered this question, Ms. Steele, or had this question answered through you. Can I just reiterate though? So measuring on the inside of a house, are there logistical concerns that you would have or your staff would have about being forced to go inside of a house as opposed to measure it on the outside of a house?
Well, through you, Mr. Chair, I think the staff preference would always be to remain exterior to a house. Certainly, our authority to enter is greater on the outside of a house. Under the Municipal Act, we have authority to do bylaw inspections exterior. We can enter people's exterior property without permission. We just have to declare our presence. To go internal to a building, we certainly need permission to do that. Presumably in these cases, it's the complainant that's making the complaint, so might allow us to go in. But you're correct, it does add an extra step.
Okay, so there's two things about that. I'm not real comfortable with the added complexity, although I understand, I think, what Councillor Prelli is getting at, with all due respect, but that is a concern that I would have. The other thing I guess I would wonder about, and maybe you can help to clarify this for me. So if you are, if the air conditioner is outside somebody's property and the neighbor is complaining about the air conditioner, what is the automatic point of measurement that you would take if there is no window in the close proximity? Like, I guess what I'm getting at here is what would happen if, I remember the first house my wife and I bought when we moved to Richmond Hill. The lots were pretty small. And we spent a lot of time out on our back deck because we didn't like our air conditioner. We had a great back deck. And so the point of reception for me, the way I would have seen it in those days, would be my back deck. So if the neighbor's air conditioner was screaming loud, and my point of reception would be, it would be interfering with my enjoyment of my yard, right, or my enjoyment of my deck, and there were no windows in the side wall. So what would be where would you take a reading at that in a scenario like that?
Through you. The point of reception can be anywhere on the neighboring property. And usually when people come to us with a complaint, they like yourself, have a specific place on their property where they are experiencing the noise at what they believe to be a nuisance level. So that is the place that determines the point of reception. And we through like conversations toward trying to make the community standard viable and fair to everyone, we definitely try to make sure it's a viable living place, like somewhere that you use. We don't accept vexatious complaints where they've just picked a point that maybe makes no sense because it's just like the edge of their property where they're never standing. But certainly a deck, a porch, a balcony, anything like that could be a viable point of reception.
Okay, so in a scenario like that, the D in this bylaw, or sorry, in this amendment, sorry, in this motion, would not be relevant, because what the person that's complaining would say is, I want you to use the point of reception being my deck, which would be closer than, say, the window that you would be measuring it from. Is that fair to say or not?
Yeah, that's correct. This D, in my understanding, would only apply when the person's complaint was they're hearing the noise when they're inside their house.
Okay, so Okay, and the only problem that I see with that is I personally think that the letter that Mr. Chapnick made in his presentation does make some sense. That I'm comfortable with the bylaw the way it's written, but I actually would prefer 50 or ambient, not ambient plus 5. I think that's enough. If we're measuring through a closed window and there's some abatement, or sorry, an open window, and there's some abatement with distance or with a screen or whatever, maybe the ambient plus 5 is okay. But the problem is if you're ambient plus 5 and you're sitting on your deck with no significant amount of abatement between the source of the noise and the deck, ambient plus 5 is actually quite a bit louder. I'm concerned about that because I guess what we're doing is we're allowing the sound of air conditioners to be the most dominant thing in the soundscape if we're allowing ambient plus 5. Can you comment on that? I mean, is that a legitimate concern that I would have?
Through you again, Mr. Mayor, I think you do have a concern. So doing both of these things is sort of like doubling up on the flexibility. So we have put the ambient plus 5 to add some flexibility to make it a bit, you could have the air conditioner be a bit louder than ambient. And now we're moving it inside the house. So again, you're making it a bit louder again. Sound does dissipate as you move away from the source, obviously. So that would be my only concern there. Yeah, there is an option where you could do it this way instead and then take away the plus 5 on in the bylaw. That would make sense. I could see that.
Okay. I understand what D is all about, but this is what I worry about is I think right now we're kind of doubling up and in maybe canceling out some of the benefit of the package that has been put together here. Is anybody I missed asking this earlier. Is anybody else that you know of in terms of municipalities doing the interior readings for this particular noise bylaw or a noise bylaw that they would have?
Through you, no, my understanding is the municipalities that I'm familiar with do the measurement on the sill at the exterior.
Okay, because that's the provincial standard.
Yes.
And that's why likely they're doing it is because it's then consistent with the provincial standard.
Yes.
Okay. All right. I would be interested to hear if other councillors are interested in moving to just a straight 50 or ambient as opposed to ambient plus 5. But at the present moment, I don't think I'm going to be able to support D. And I do understand the rationale for it, but I think that it adds an extra layer of complexity. And one of the problems that we're running into with the noise bylaw, the way I understand it and the research that I've done and so on, is that it is kind of complex. And having it as simple as possible for our bylaw officers to be able to enforce it, I think is really important. So I would be comfortable with A, B, and C. I'm not so comfortable with D. And I would be interested to hear if anybody else is interested in lowering it to 50 or ambient. But beyond that, I'll leave it at that for the first round. I see Councillor Pirelli has his hand up for a second round. So go ahead, Councillor Pirelli.
Thank you. So again, I stated earlier that my rationale is that if we're going to talk about what is offensive to people, we have to take the reading at where they're being offended, not where they're not standing. Ms. Steele stated categorically, she's not going to take a vexatious complaint because someone says that the noise at the fence line is ambient plus 5 degrees when they're standing 30 feet away on their deck behind a row of trees where they can't hear the sound. And that's reasonable. It's about being offended. It's not about the noise at the property line. So I want to apply the same standard for people at a windowsill. So let me give you an example. I may have a window that goes into a covered porch that nobody's standing in, but yet it offends them, or a wine cellar. It could be a basement window, and there's nobody in that wine cellar, and you're going to go to the outside windowsill where nobody is standing. There's nobody in. It could actually be, what do you call it? An electrical room that has a window, and it could be 1 foot by 1 foot, 2 feet by 2 feet. And you're going to take a reading on the outside when there's actually nobody standing inside that room. And to say that it's easier to measure at the exterior windowsill is categorically false. I can tell you that at the side of my house between my neighbor, I have one window. It is on the second floor. And it's going to be a lot more complicated to go up a ladder and stand there to take a reading than it is to go inside the house and stand in that room and take the reading. So I think for consistency purposes, I would like to move the bylaw with D and to be voted on as one. I'm not going to vote on A, B, and C as a package and D separately. So my motion is a package deal. Otherwise, I will not support the bylaw. So that is my motion. That is what has been seconded. If we vote on it in its entirety, fantastic. If you don't like the bylaw with D, then vote against it. And if you're successful, then you can make a new motion. That's what my request is, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, well, with all due respect, Councillor, it is A, B, C, and D. And that is the way.
No, then remove the letters, remove.
No, that is what is on the floor right now.
No. It's for clarification, Mr. Chairman. All right. A, B, C, and D, remove the letters. It is one motion, sir. The motion is I accept the staff recommendations as long as, put it in there, as long as that the standard operating procedure be amended for interior sound measuring to be 1 foot within the residence.
Councillor, that's not what we've been talking about. For the
No,
last
that's,
six speakers.
then thank you for clarifying that you did not understand.
No, that's
my
not,
intention.
that, I'm sorry, but that's not the way this was presented to council. It's
Doesn't matter how it was
as
presented.
A,
That
B,
was
C, and D, and that's the way the council will
No,
be.
there is
Unless,
no A,
Mr.
B, C,
Clerk,
and D. The
there is
clerk
something
decided-
procedurally that we've done incorrect, if you could let me know.
What's that?
Through you, Mayor West, no, the motion has been moved and seconded, is now in council's hand.
Okay.
As it is.
All right, thank you. Is
I
there
withdraw
anybody
the
else that
motion.
would like to speak?
I withdraw
on
the
second?
motion. I withdraw the motion.
Okay, that's fine. We have no motion on the floor then.
Thank you.
So
I have a
would ask-
motion I want to make.
Councillor DePaulo.
I have a motion I want to make.
Councillor DePaulo had his hand up.
I have
Go
the
ahead,
floor.
Councillor DePaulo.
I have the floor.
You
Mr.
withdrew the
Chair.
motion.
Thank you, Mayor
I'm looking
West.
for a
Because
motion.
I have the floor.
Go ahead, Councillor DePaulo.
Thank you, Mayor
Because I
West.
have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor West. I'd like to
Fast and
move
loose.
the staff
Don't play fast and
recommendations
loose
as
with
they
the
are.
rules. You gave me the floor and I
There's a
withdrew my
secondary.
motion. Now I have another motion. I have the floor.
I'd like to
Councillor DePaulo, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor West. I'd like to move the staff recommendations exactly as they are. If there's a seconder, and I think we've had enough debate on this, and I think it's all been well said as to why that's the best way to proceed.
Okay, I'm looking for a seconder for that motion. Councillor Silvitz. Okay, is there any other, so Councillor Pirelli on the new motion?
Thank you. Well, therefore, Mr. Chairman, you've again violated my rights. You've abandoned procedure. You've decided to play fast and loose with the rules. And this is the reason why people call this council dysfunctional, is because of the decisions that you make supported by the majority of council. That needed to be said. Now, you leave me no choice. I have to move an amendment.
That's fine.
Of course it is, because then you can vote down the amendment and then vote on A, B, C, and D separately. What a game of shenanigans. that you have created, Mr. Chairman. You should be ashamed of yourself.
Okay, Councillor Pirelli, go ahead.
You know my amendment. Don't
Okay.
pretend like you don't know.
No, I'm not pretending that. I'm waiting for you. You have the floor.
Oh, I had the floor before, but you took it away from me.
Mr. Ban?
I hope you're proud of yourself.
Uh,
An amendment. Next time, Mr. Ban, when I read a motion, make sure you capture it properly, because you did not capture it properly. What am I doing, Councillor Barrows? I'm expressing my discontent with what's going on. You know, I'm not
The
insane.
amendment, he's moving an amendment.
Yeah.
Okay, we need a seconder for that amendment.
No, that's not my amendment. That's not my amendment.
Okay, well, what is your amendment?
That the staff recommendations that are being moved, as long as the standard operating procedures be amended for interior sound measuring to be 1 foot within the residence.
I'm not sure I understand that. Mr. Ban, have you captured that?
Through you, Mayor,
Wasn't the first time.
the motion to amend 5.6.11B states that a motion to amend shall propose removing, substituting for, or adding to the words of a main motion.
Yes, and I'm adding on the condition that the standard operating procedure be amended for interior sound measuring to be 1 foot within the residence. Not a D, not a D.
Mr. Clerk, I look to you for procedural guidance on this.
Through you, Mayor West. If we go to the main motion and Regional Local Council Burley, if you would, we can just add it to here and then I will clean it up after. So my understanding
That's
is that
the problem we had, Mr. Ben. That's the problem we had before. You put it down, it wasn't accurate, and the chair took the opportunity to play fast and loose with the rules.
Okay, Councillor Pirelli,
You know what I mean?
nobody's playing fast and loose with the rules.
Well, yes, you are, sir.
No, it's, okay.
Yes, you are, sir.
This is the way we would see a motion being put on the agenda and on the screen. If you would like to propose this as a D, we can vote on it. If people of council in the majority agrees with it, then it passes. If council of majority does not agree with it, then it doesn't. That's democracy.
No, that's not democracy.
Hey, Mr. Ban, please make this a D and we will finish up our speaking and then we will eventually vote on this.
No, that motion's A, that the following paragraph be added to the main motion.
through you, Mayor West, Regional Local Council Burley, if you could just, with your indulgence, let me know what it is that you would like up here. Certainly I can put it up here. Currently, there's paragraphs A, B, and C, and I understand that
Staff recommendations A, B, and C be approved only if the standard operating procedures be amended for interior sound measuring to be 1 foot within the residence.
Okay, so then that is a D in the motion.
Through you, Mayor West, Regional Local Council Burley, it would be a paragraph B because we would be adding to the main motion. So
if you can see here, gentlemen, that D encompasses A, B, C, and D. The amendment is that the staff recommendations A, B, and C be approved only if the standard operating procedures be amended for interior sound measuring. This is not D, this is the amendment.
As an amendment, it needs to be an additional thing to the main motion. Otherwise, it's not complementary to the main motion. If you would like to add that, Councillor, as a D, I believe that's procedurally acceptable. Otherwise, it's not contrary to the main motion. The main motion says one thing, this says something contrary. If you would like to add it as a D, that's perfectly acceptable. We need a seconder, however, for it.
This says that it's complementary.
If this was added as a part and parcel of the main motion, it would not be complementary. It needs to be added as a separate thing so that people can decide whether to vote for it or not.
I'm amending it. I'm not adding.
And your amendment is a D. It is an additional item as a separate letter, and that's what we're doing right now.
That's fine. You want to vote it down, vote it down.
Do we have a seconder for this motion? Or sorry, for this amendment? Okay, I don't see a seconder. So the amendment is lost. We're back to the main motion. Is there anybody else that would like to speak on the main motion?
Sorry, I'm sorry, I could not. I will second that motion.
Okay, can you please put that back up, Mr. Clerk? Okay, Councillor Munch, would you like to speak to this?
Yes. So I think it's what we learned today in this process of our discussion is that, once again, I heard people say it's more information, it's an interpreted, it's a supportive. We have learned, if nothing else today, at least I have categorically made it very clear, if we do not dot the I's and cross the T's, others will interpret. We want clear direction from council as to what the expectation is, so that when we're out there communicating with the public and they're saying, hey, guys, what are you doing? Or guys and gal, what are you doing out there? So we're asking not an interpretation as to where you get or where you don't get or how it works and how it doesn't work. We have to keep tightening this up because, for example, what's going to happen with the net zero targets that are 90%, as per our staff report, 90% of all households existing today, as per the staff report in the federal government, must be retrofitted. Well, we're going to have to amend all of these laws as they go forward. So this is just another example of how we have a measuring detail for people to be clear in our bylaws. So we should be clear on that. We shouldn't have someone saying I'm on a back deck, but my area is quiet, but that's not, but it was quiet when I bought, but it's not quiet today. We need people to fulfill, say, here's my black and white, here's how we go forwards. And the more that we govern more responsibly and being updated, the better the residents have an expectation, understanding those expectations, and not that we have interpretation throughout communities so that we don't have this unclear direction. So I think to be safe to say we need to measure from a clear place is a good thing. It adds clarification, so we reduce interpretation, so we can get efficient and effective direction on how we're governing here, not where one side of the fence is one way, another side of the fence is the other. One area of Richmond Hill is this way, another area is somewhere else. We need to be very, very clear. I think this motion does that. So there it is.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Munch. I don't have anybody else on the amendment. Okay, seeing none, all recorded vote, Councillor Sullivan.
Although I was waving my hand, Mr. Chairman.
You've spoken on the amendment, have you not?
Yes, I'd like a wrap up on the amendment.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. Again, colleagues, this amendment is to keep consistency with the point of reception. I believe the province has it wrong. I don't expect my bylaw officers to climb up the side of a building on a ladder to go and stand there in the way of the sound, by the way, if they're standing on a ladder and trying to measure at a windowsill on the second story. It's much safer, much easier, and it's more accurate that they're taking the reading where the person who's claiming to be offended on the interior of the home is actually liable to hear the sound. It may not make a difference, much of a difference from the exterior sill to the interior, but the fact is that it does make a difference, and it avoids these vexatious complaints that somebody claims there's a window sill somewhere. And if that room on the other side of that window doesn't even have the capacity to hold a person, it would be a vexatious claim, and we would never know about it because we're measuring outside. We don't know what's inside that window. And that's the reason why we need to measure it inside the window where a human can be offended by the noise. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so voting on the amendment, we have a recorded vote. Councillor Silovitz, Mr. Band, go ahead.
Voting on the motion to amend, Councillor Silovitz,
No.
Councillor Munch,
Yes.
Councillor Barros,
Yes.
Councillor Chan,
No.
Mayor West,
No.
Regional and Local Councillor DePaulo,
No.
Councillor Liu,
Yes.
Regional and Local Councillor Pirelli.
Sure.
That motion fails to carry on a tie vote.
Of course.
Okay, so we're back to the main motion. I don't believe I have anybody else on the speakers list for the main motion at the moment. Councillor Silovitz's recorded vote.
Could we have it on the screen just to be 100% sure? Thank you, Ryan. Thank you.
Through you, Mayor West. Voting on the motion, Councillor Silovitz,
Yes.
Councillor Liu,
Yes.
Councillor Munch,
Yes.
Regional and Local Councillor Pirelli,
No, sir.
Councillor Chan,
Yes.
Councillor Barros,
Yes.
Mayor West,
Yes.
Regional and Local Councillor DePaulo.
Yes.
That motion carries only.
That last "and" should be removed, Ryan. Excuse me for interrupting.
Thank you.
Well, you can't do that at this point. Motion's already been passed, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, the last item I believe on the agenda today is under other, oh, wait a second, under other business is 14.2, member motion from Councillor Liu, review of snow and windrow removal after major snowstorm on January 17th. So I'll bring it to council. Over to you, Councillor Liu.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think my motion is pretty self-explanatory. We just experienced a snowstorm of the decades, and I understand that due to the pandemic, staff is facing a lot of challenges. You know, it is shortage of staff, so on and so on. And I would like to thank our operation, communication, and access staff for their effort. But despite all the effort, you know, I at least my office is still receiving a lot of complaints from the residents. You know, it's, let's say, you know, the coordination between the plows and the windrow machines, the damage to the curbs, icy sidewalks, and so on and so on. So I think it's prudent for council to have staff to come back with a report on, you know, how we can improve, you know, what we can do to better service our residents. Not only that, well, no, I'm just want to make it clear that, you know, staff did a very good job. This report also, I would like to see what council can do to help staff to provide better services. So if staff said we need more money, so be it. Okay, let's discuss it. And also the cost effectiveness of our windrow program. You know, I received a few correspondence from residents asking for that. So I would like the staff to actually look into it, so that, you know, when things happen again, we won't repeat ourselves. So that's basically it. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Liu. I think I saw Councillor Chan with your hand up. Do you want to second it?
Yes, please.
Okay, Councillor Munch, I got you.
May I speak to it?
Go ahead, sorry, sir. Go ahead.
Oh, thank you. Well, first of all, like Councillor New, I did receive a number of residents' concerns and about the service. Certainly, this is something that I have also advocated for in the last term. I'm glad that this term that council collectively we bring that in, and which is a welcoming move. I did mention it when we passed initially was that it has to be timely, meaning in terms of snow windshield service, meaning the removal of windshield would have to be within reasonable time after snow plow. Because I have received issues such as Councillor New just mentioned, everything that he talked about, I got residents complain to me like that. It's still a good program, and I join Councillor New in thanking our staff in working the best they can. But it's not just only confined to the most recent major storm. Certainly, it creates additional challenges. So I think there's an opportunity for our council, our city, our staff to look at, now that we've been doing it for a while, what can be improved upon in terms of the timing between after the snow plow and the snow windshield service. I can share that with you at a personal level, not only this winter, but also past winter, because of I need to get out of my driveway, have to do the snow windshield myself instead of waiting. I don't know when this new snow windshield service will come, and then I return with this. I have to clear myself out 2 times to clear the snow windshield, and that actually also happens recently in that January. So I may be only one person, but I gather the other thing that I might add is that when staff are looking at it, and there's also an issue pertaining to regional road, specifically in Ward 6, there are homes actually are fronting on the regional road, such on 16th Avenue. And my understanding from staff is snow windshield program does not cover properties fronting on the regional road. So on that note, I want that as part of the review, staff looking into that. How are we going to mitigate that and cover that gap? Because in all fairness to all property owners in the city, people's properties fronting on the regional road do pay taxes to us as well. So
sorry,
I'm leaving it as that.
Councillor Chan, my apologies. Councillor Munch, point of order.
I would hope that the chair would hope that the people would stay to the motion. If the member would like to move an amendment to the motion as what he's speaking to, I would encourage him to do that. That is not what the motion says.
Okay.
So
I think he's making the comments, Councillor Munch. Councillor Chan.
No, sir. What he said was, your interpretation, what he said, again, if you want to interpret the words, what he said was that he's worried about regional roads. There's nothing in this motion whatsoever about direction of staff to regional roads.
Councillor Chan's making a comment about something that he's concerned about. Councillor Chan, I would ask though that you stick to the content of the motion. Thank you, Councillor Munch.
Thank you. Mayor, your interpretation is absolutely correct. I'm making a comment. I'm not asking staff doing something on top of what this motion is talking about. I'm just saying pay attention on that. So in any event, I have completed my supporting second motion remarks. And thank you, Councillor Munch, for listening attentively. And thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. The next person would be Regional Local Councillor Pirelli.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My first question is to Director Stewart. Through you, Mr. Chairman. Director, I've been reading on social media. I have 2 comments to make, and maybe you can help clarify these questions. I've been reading in social media now for a very long time that the windrow snow clearing, I guess this is part of the report that's going to come back that Councillor Liu is asking for. The windrow snow clearing program cost the city over $4 million a year to implement. Could you please, once and for all, set the record straight to what the actual cost is?
Through the chair, that would be, we would have to go away. We could talk about that in the report. It's actually a complex question. What's involved? What's in that number and what's out? Because if you recall, when we actually went forward, when council directed staff to move into the windrow program, it actually involved the sidewalk program also. So there's quite a bit involved in that. So I would suggest that staff take that question away and we come back and report on it.
Thank you, Mr. Stewart. So I will make an amendment if necessary, unless you're satisfied that that will be part of the response to this motion. Would you undertake to bring that information when you bring the response back? I see Councillor Liu nodding.
Mr. Stewart?
Yes, through the chair, yes, we could include that in our report.
Yeah, and what I'm looking for is the actual cost associated with the windrow. In other words, the drivers, the amortization of the truck, the fuel, depreciation, so on and so forth, for the 15 events that we have per year, etc. Thank you. And the reason I say this is because there's a lot of misinformation out there. And they're saying it's over $4 million. And I know it's substantially less than $1 million to my calculations based on the experiences, how many times, how many drivers, how many trucks that go out. So I'll be looking forward for that. Secondly, I want to make sure, and I want to state it here again, for maybe the 10th time that I've stated here. We keep hearing from residents and some members of council that people are blocked in and that they can't wait and have to clear their own windrow. Again, let me be clear. The purpose of the windrow clearing at the end of your driveway is not to clear your driveway immediately in seconds after the street plow plows the street. Although both units start at the same time, one behind the other, we all know, or should know, that the street plows move much quicker than the windrow plow. The windrow plow has to stop at each house. The street plow goes straight down the road. Now, there's a safety concern. Of course, if you need to get out of your driveway 1 minute after the street plow goes by and the windrow plow isn't coming by, up to 8 hours. If you're the last house on the route, you could be 8 hours later. The expectation was never that the second you get blocked in, you get unblocked. The promise was that at some point within 8 hours after the snowfall, the end of snowfall, that your windrow will be cleared. Here's the part that everybody fails to understand. You do not have to clear your entire windrow, the width of 2 driveways, for example, right down to the bare asphalt in order to get your vehicle out of your driveway. If you can't wait for the windrow plow to come by, and let me get this straight, 95% of the population is very pleased with the windrow program and how it's implemented. I'm one of them. But if you need to get out of your driveway, you don't have to clear the entire width and the entire depth. If you have a 4x4, you could probably go over most windrows comfortably. If you have a smaller vehicle, take a path the width of your car, 7 or 8 feet, not 25 feet, 7 or 8 feet, take the top snow down till there's about 6 inches of snow on the ground, and then drive over it and get out. Later on, after you come home or while you're out, our wonderful windrow drivers will come by and clean it right down to the asphalt beautifully. That is the expectation. The expectation never was that minutes after the plow blocks you in, it gets cleared. We're a very fortunate community that we have this service. Lots of communities don't have it, and they always have to clear their entire windrow, the entire depth. And sometimes, yes, they come home and it's solid ice. What I'm saying is that, please, we need, Mr. Stewart, we need to get that message out to the public that they don't have to clear their entire windrow. There are still people that don't even know we have that service. So please, when you bring this report back, also include that and let people know and let our communications department know that they need to get that message out to people. The expectation is not to clear it within seconds. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Pirelli. We've got, next up is Councillor Munch and then Councillor Silvitz.
Good day. So I really want to thank the mover for this motion. We had exchanges about this for a few weeks now, and I'm happy, this is done. I'd like to, along the same theme of today, I want to get forward with language to make sure we're clear. So on the motion, it says, therefore be it resolved that, and Mr. Chan, I ask you to read this well. So therefore be it resolved that council directs staff to conduct a full review of the city's snow removal operation and communication plan, report back before the summer recess. If we approve this, I'd like to know what staff understand this to be, because if I have to move amendments or whatever to make clarification, I will, because my interpretation of this might be slightly different than where staff are. And I don't want to have a staff report come back months from now and then us having to go and revisit this. So can I please hear, what does this mean to have a full review of the city's snow removal operation and communication plan? Obviously back before summer recess, but just that part of the sentence. Can I get some clarification on what this means to staff?
Councillor Munch, you're asking Mr. Stewart? I missed that, I'm sorry.
Well, whichever staff is whoever wants to answer that, I just want to make sure that if this was to be approved, what would be the expectation that council should be receiving, and what are you going to be doing as this? Because I want to make sure that we're very focused on what we're trying to do.
Okay, I see Acting Commissioner Steele or Mr. Stewart, whichever one would like to take a shot at that. Go ahead.
I can start through you, Mr. Mayor, and Jeff can add anything if he wants, but a full review to me would include costing and statistics from the past couple winters, how many events we've had, what we've done, and whether we've met service levels. We've heard a couple additional things that council has asked us to include, including a look at regional roads and whether there's any changes we would recommend there, and as well as the communications component of this, what we've done in terms of communications. I'm not sure, Jeff, if you would want to add anything to that, because I know you're already working on a report.
Yes, thank you. So through the chair, just to build on what the commissioner is saying, is we are actually already working on that report. It is a multi-pronged approach. As you can see, winter control is quite complex when you get into it. We deliver multiple services across the city. So it would include everything from our sidewalk operation, road plowing, windrow plowing, and then also we've got our community centers, municipal parking lots. There's a big component even related to the sports dome where we have to do winter control on. So all this would be brought forward as information, and basically the items that the commissioner has talked about, sort of cost related, some statistics and weather patterns, etc., could be discussed in that report.
I didn't hear anything about parks and walkways. Is that going to be looked into?
If council, through the chair, if council is looking at that, I know that I've had conversations with members of council on maintaining recreational trails. If we're going to expand that out, that could be included.
So help me understand. So does staff, when we move a motion, it's not the letter that we write, it's what you guys are hearing. So for example, in this discussion, and I raised earlier, one of the members of council said that we want to have a review from Richmond Hill property taxpayers to review the operation of York Region. I heard you say the same thing, that you're going to review regional roads. So if you're going to include regional roads, if this is how you interpret it, does this mean that you're going to engage the region? And should we be moving an amendment to this to include the region? And are we expecting people from Markham or exactly how is the regional budget? And we don't have any jurisdiction of a higher tier. There's nothing in this motion to deal with York Region, but we have staff willing to go out there and do work upon a jurisdiction that we have no responsibility for, no governance through. So is that now like this is going to I want hopefully the CAO, I don't know if he's on this acting COC is going forward from this day forward, Councillor Munch will be going through every single document coming through to council and asking for clarification on every single word as it relates to motions, because this motion does not say that. This council is about to move forwards and we have staff doing something else other than what is written here is very, very concerning to me. So nothing here is for us to go investigate regional roads in Markham or Vaughan or Richmond Hill. We don't have any jurisdiction with regards to that. Now, if you want to come back with a report and say that the region's not doing a good enough job, or you want to take more role into that, is that what we're saying? We want to take more responsibility on regional roads? Is that what our interpretation is on this? Because the Ward 6 councillor saying that he wants to take more obligation for Richmond Hill and regional roads. Is that what I'm understanding from staff?
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, point of order, Councillor Chan.
My name was being mentioned, no, not directly, but it's my position. And I did not say such thing as the speaker was alleging to, that I have said.
Well, then, then help me understand, why is staff, if the Ward 6 councillor is saying that he never made any mention of York Region, yet staff aren't, and I heard him say something. And I actually,
Councillor Mudge, I haven't actually ruled on this yet. Sorry. I understand what Councillor Chan is saying. He was making a mention. We're trying to do a thorough review of snow clearing operations. The discussion that we're having right now is to see what other expectations and what other levels of service we'll be looking at. So I don't think it's unreasonable for him to have mentioned it. And staff has said that they're willing to take a look at it, and then it'll be up to council to decide.
So
go ahead.
This is not eating up my time, sir, because
no, it's
okay.
not.
You just there's a language disconnect again. Are we talking about regional roads? Yes or no?
Okay, so we're not going to have this debate right now, but just to answer your question, Councillor Chan I think was well within his right to speak his mind and mention that the windrow service, I believe this is what he was saying, is not available right now for anybody that has a driveway on a regional road. We are looking at staff to ask them to come back with a staff report to take a look at what we're doing with winter maintenance, to look at what we might do better, maybe change the levels of service, whatever. It's really, I see this and is a blue sky exercise where we're taking a look at what's possible, and staff will come back. And I think we should give them the freedom to explore different possibilities. Ultimately, it'll be up to council to decide whether they want to do it or not. I hope that answers your question.
Great. So through you, the chair, to specifically Mr. Stewart. So is that what you understand, sir, that we're going to be investigating windrow on regional roads as per what the mayor had just said?
So through the chair, part of our program, part of the windrow program does include work out on the regional roads, and there can be some opportunities there. Right now, just for clarification, staff is working to the service level approved by council March 25th of 2019. there is some recommendations that could be made coming out of that based on our experience. And then also we do maintain the regional sidewalks, and we do have a strong partnership with the region where we have to work very closely with them. And again, as I mentioned to earlier, this is a multi-approach program, very complex. We get into sidewalks. We're dealing with multi-use trails now. We're starting to talk about cycle tracks. There's quite a bit of complexity when you start talking about the realm of winter control. So we would be discussing a number of these areas.
So the motion says, and through you, the chair, have both Ms. Steele and Mr. Stewart read the motion?
Yes.
Okay, so the motion says a full review of the city's removal of operation and communication plan. Again, we're going off topic here because now I heard you make mention of our 2019 concepts of what we brought forward and some lessons learned and where we're going as we're doing a review. This motion's talking about our operation on the ground, so we service existing residents who have raised concerns. And now we're talking about regional roads, expanding, maybe doing more. I'd like to go back to the mover. Was that the intent of the mover, to look to expand the services or review about existing operation and communication plan? Because just maybe I'd like to know what the mover's position, and maybe the seconder wants to talk about that as well. So is this about our existing snow removal or expanding it based upon other things like the Ward 6 councilor and the mayor talking about other things as well?
Go ahead, Councillor Liu, if you'd like to answer that.
Thank you. My intent is existing snow removal service.
So, Mayor, are you aware of this? And Councillor Ward 6 councilor, are you aware of this now? And do you want to rethink? Because this is about existing operation. We have existing responsibilities for the Richmond Hill taxpayer. And we're not talking about going back and reviewing our plans of 2019. We're talking about, we had a snow service of which residents are saying the service that we're getting really wasn't up to our expectation. And I've heard resident members of council say that. I've heard it. I've spoken it to the mover. So we want this review to be about existing operations and existing communication plan. Is that clear to staff? Through the chair, is that clear to everybody?
Or Mr. Stewart?
I will answer that through you, Mr. Chair. Yes, that's clear to us. I believe that's what I've always interpreted, a full review of the city's snow removal operation and community plan. So a full review of any snow removal operations that the city is currently doing and the communication plan associated with that.
So what we're doing today, not what we want to do or hypothetically could do, it's what our plan and implementation of the last snowfall and the previous snowfalls have been doing. And we'd like to know what that review with actual deliverables and the review of those deliverables of what we actually did. And the language says, and we want to know what the communication plan evaluation is on that as well. That's what the motion says. And I want to make sure that we're all clear, because I'm hearing interpretation from two members of council, and then I'm also hearing from Mr. Stewart and the mover. That's not the intention of the movement.
Councillor Munch, your time is up. But if you'd like,
I don't know how I time can be up when you're interrupting me and we're having banter. I said time.
Actually, the clerk is keeping track of that, like we would do when we're in the council chambers. So
okay,
thank you. So the next speaker on the list would be Councillor Silovitz.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a good discussion, and thank you, Councillor Liu, for bringing this forward. I would just like to ask a couple of questions with regards to what we've been speaking about here as well. When we're including a discussion through you, Mr. Mayor, to most likely to Director Stewart, are we including capital costs as well as operating costs? Because I do believe they have a place.
So through the chair, it may include capital costs. Right now, I would suggest it would be more reflecting really on our day-to-day operating cost, our operating budget. If we're looking at existing infrastructure and our existing services.
Okay, thank you. It's just a question. And if you come across any capital costs while you're doing your investigation, if you could add it, then I think it would be prudent. Also, when we refer to this giving better instruction to communications or through communications, most of the calls that I've received, especially this winter, is there seems to be a failure of understanding by some residents that if you live on a court, that court is plowed last. So if we could make sure when you're discussing direction for communications, that's another issue that residents should be made very much aware of. That the regional arterial roads are cleared first, then we come into the connector neighborhood roads, and then we do the crescents and the courts. So I just think it provides a better understanding for our residents, and it would certainly help allay some of the calls that I receive, and I've forwarded emails to Director Stewart as well, so he knows what I'm talking about. Thank you. And then just my last piece is we have there was a communication email that was sent to us. Has that already been added in, or do we have to add that in now?
Sorry, Councillor, so that's to
the piece of communication we got from Ms. Pisana Beaumont. Is that already added into our agenda? It is, or do we have to add it with this discussion?
Sorry, I missed a part of what you said, Councillor Silvas, but I think that's part of what we're doing with the communication plan, right? That is the expectation, to be dealing with the communication plan as well as the operational issues that are involved in that. Does that answer your question?
No, but what I mean is when we have an additional piece of communication in the revised agenda from Ms. Pisana Beaumont. And I just want to make sure that her specific piece of communication is included in all of this. Do we have to add it to what we're doing here, or has it already been included right at the beginning of the agenda? That's all.
Yeah, we've received it, Councillor. It was part of the, okay. Yeah, that was one of the things that we received earlier in the meeting. It was a while ago, so I can.
Okay, I know. I just wanted to make sure. Yeah. Okay, thank you. That's it.
All right, I believe I might be the last person on the list on this first round. So I think this is a good motion. It won't come back until the summertime. We probably won't be thinking about snow too much, hopefully, by then. But I think I read it a couple of times and I started to understand it. I think the intent of this a little bit more clearly. And I see several values coming out of this, and we've touched on this. Other members of council have in this discussion. One of the values that I think will come out of this is that it'll be hopefully a benchmark and a more clear communication on what exactly the levels of service that we're currently offering in the city are. So, and I think that'll help to set the expectation that residents have when there's a snowfall event, and particularly a really big snowfall event like we had the other day. I would hope that in the report, staff will talk about some of the challenges. I mean, I know that the window service is actually good for a number of different things. And actually, Councillor Pirelli, did mention a few of those things as well. But I think there's also some challenges with it. And I think people need to understand that so that when it does snow, they'll know what to expect. I know that last snowstorm was challenging because it was so big, and that was a tough go for our staff, and I appreciate that. But I also think that by setting the expectations in a more normal size snowfall event, I think that has value. And the communications plan also, I mean, if we're not getting the word out to our residents, then that's a problem too. So we need to be making sure that everybody's clear. If council decides when they see that staff report that, the benchmarks are not sufficient and we want to make the snow clearing operations better, and increase the level of service, increase the number of walkways and so on that we currently clear in parks and so on. I mean, that'll be up to council to decide. The reference earlier to regional roads, I mean, I get complaints periodically about, you know, I live on a regional road and everybody else gets window service, but I don't. And you know, that's a concern. And it's, you know, I get why that is the case, but you know, I would assume when council gets all the information and takes a look at it, we can look at the whole snow clearing operation and make a determination. Are we satisfied with that as a councillor? Sorry, as a council, are we, do we think it needs to be increased? And as Councillor Liu said, I mean, if it needs to be, the level of service needs to be increased, well, it could cost us some extra dollars, or maybe we won't see the value in that and we'll say no, or maybe we'll see the value in that and say, yes, let's do it. But I think that this is a time for a check-in. The windrow program has been in place now for a couple of years. I'm sure we have lots of data. I've seen an improvement, generally speaking, in the windrow program over the years, but you know, hey, we can always get better. And I think that this is an opportunity to take a look at what we're doing and assess what we're doing. If there's improvements to be made, great. If there's not, fine. If everybody's comfortable with the level of service that we have, great. And if they're not, well, then how much is it going to cost to improve it? And let's take a look at that as a council. So I'm looking forward to getting the staff report. I think it will be helpful, and we can go from there. So, Councillor Silva, you want to speak on a second round?
Thank you. Not really a second round. I just wanted to add something. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just believe that at this point in time in this conversation, because we're in the public realm, that I would like to thank our staff for all the work that they have done through this very difficult winter, not only weather-wise, but because there was enormous amounts of short staffing because of dealing with Omicron as well. So just from my end, I just want to make a public thank you to our operations staff, Director Stewart, you do a terrific job, and to all the people who you direct. Thank you for doing such a phenomenal job under some very, very difficult circumstances this year. Thank you.
Good point. Councillor Munch, second round, go ahead.
Good day. It is to Councillor Silowitz's point. Absolutely, this has been a challenging environment, a lot of snow. I know of at least 2 residents who are in the hospital. One has just been released because of a snow incident in Toronto. And I took one of them there in York Region upon their return because of a slippery sidewalk. And the expectation of some of the residents who may not be totally familiar with long-standing winter, Canadian winters, and many of us who have not seen a major snowfall in some time. And it's really, we are not in the snow removal business. We're in the snow pushing business, generally speaking. And I'm going to say to you that I saw Yonge Street, the amount of work you did on Yonge Street for our village corner, look after those residents, Mr. Stewart, was great. I had my snow plow out there myself, as you know, and cleared some of the streets. It was really tough for my pretty big snow blower, and I couldn't move through the ice. And the movement that you did was amazing. And you didn't get the recognition. And here we are today asking for a review, which I'm trying to get a very clear focus. So we focus on our operation and how we're doing, and that we get the communication plan for the expectation. Because too many times we're receiving complaints and you react to those complaints and you get into a spin. But the management of our windrow, how we're getting the attention to detail of our standards, how we're doing that communication plan, and making sure the expectation matches how we're delivering. And we have an accountable plan so that we don't have people complaining to our operators, and those operators under very tough conditions have to hear that abuse. And you know, it was really tough for some of those operators. I witnessed it firsthand and had intervened, just in my political best interest, but it absolutely was, you know, people have to be explained. And I think it's really tough for a staff member who's doing a snowplow who wants to actually go to the operation to absorb that brunt because of, you know, a very challenging situation. So job well done publicly, directly. I've told you personally, but we do have to make sure that we try to do the best we can for a value proposition for the people that we serve. And some people have politicized the snow operation because we were in a mayor election, which was really, really sad. And I was really happy to see some residents speak up to defend our operation. And I think what we need to do is when we go through this review, look forward and find how we can do better value propositions. But be clear, there are other jurisdictions that didn't do anywhere near what Richmond Hill did. And a job well done to our crew in very tough situations on a short staff, on a very, in a time when we have a health situation, where that's where our position is. So really happy. Let's get this focus of the motion and on value proposition on the letter, not on the conjecture, not on the pretend, and not on the culture, on actually trying to make a difference to improve the quality of life so that we can work cooperatively and collectively for a great Richmond Hill. So that would be why we're doing this. So lessons learned, but job well done 100%. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Munch. Councillor Liu, is this, you're the next person. Go ahead.
Yeah, just to wrap up, just want to once again thank you, staff, and especially Mr. Stewart and his staff, providing us all the updates and very, very responsive when we receive complaints. Thank you very much. I'm very happy that we have a very fulsome discussion on this, and that's my intent of the motion. Is not to put specific in it. So because every councillor has different concerns and they have all different things to worry about. So this is the venue to just say it out loud and let staff listen and then go back and do the report. So I'm happy that every colleagues spoke about it, and I'm looking forward to the report. Thank you, really, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Liu. Okay, so we've got a motion before us. I think I saw a recorded vote called by Councillor Slovitz. Mr. Ban, go ahead.
Thank you, Superior Mayor West, voting on the member motion. Councillor Slovitz.
Yes.
Regional Local Councillor DePaula.
Yes.
Councillor Chan.
Yes, yes.
Councillor Munch.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chan. Mr. Liu.
Mayor West.
Yes.
Councillor Liu.
Yes.
Councillor Barros.
Yes.
Regional Local Councillor Pirelli.
Yes.
That motion carries unanimously.
Okay, thank you. So I think this brings us fairly close to the end of our meeting. We have a couple of bylaws that we need to move, bylaw 16.3 and 16.4. Can I get a mover, Councillor Chan, and a seconder, Councillor Silvitz? All those in favor? Opposed? That carries unanimously. And confirmatory bylaw to confirm the proceedings of this council meeting, Councillor Silvitz. Don't all speak at once. Councillor Munch, all those in favor? Okay, opposed, carried. And the probably your favorite part of this meeting, motion to adjourn. Councillor Silvitz and Councillor Chan, all those in favor? Opposed? I think that carries unanimously, Mr. Clerk. So thank you, everybody. Thank you. This is a long meeting. I appreciate everybody hanging in there and